Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome everyone to our fourth community advisory meeting. I'll call this meeting of the Waco ISD Board of Trustees officially to order. We do have a quorum present tonight, and I'm excited to hear what we have on the agenda. So I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Kincannon.
Great, thank you. Welcome everyone to meeting number 4. We're excited that you all could be here this evening. We do have a lot of information to share. We're going to spend a good amount of time talking about Waco High School this evening and school costs. So I don't want to take too much time with the introduction, but I do, before I pass it over to our architect, Jared Sterzinger, I do want to mention that we want to give a brief update on the winter storm, and our staff will do that. But before we do, I'm going to let Jared Sterzinger with O'Connell Robertson talk first and do the introduction. Jared?
So good evening. Can you hear me?
Amy?
Yes.
This is Amy. I'm a poor substitute for Jared, but I'm here standing in for Jared today. So welcome back, everyone. Hope you've recovered from that crazy winter weather we experienced. On behalf of our entire design team, we're glad to be with you tonight and picking up our work on the long-range facility planning for Waco ISD. Thank you, Dr. Kincannon, for the introduction, and I'll give you guys a quick overview of tonight's program. We do have a lot to cover, as you might expect. And as Dr. Kincannon mentioned, we're going to be focused quite a bit on Waco High School options tonight. Some of the information we're sharing is a carryover from the last meeting that we didn't really have a chance to discuss. So we'll be managing our time and our conversations closely tonight. As you can see here, we are on our 4th meeting. And here's the agenda for the evening. So we'll have a winter storm impact update from the district from Kevin in just a second. And then we're going to have facility first cost conversation. So Doug's going to share some information about building costs. Then we're going to share a couple of project case studies. And then Casey and Dina from Waco ISD are going to talk about kind of the lens with which you might look at a high school campus. We'll talk about some options, and then we're going to have breakout sessions and give everybody a chance to provide some input. So I think with that, again, welcome. Glad you're here. We really appreciate you being with us and know it's been a really hectic couple of weeks. But I'm going to turn it over to Kevin now to talk about the impact on facilities that this winter weather event had. Kevin?
All right. So first of all, I'd like to say good evening to everybody. I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of address everything that went on. Kind of want to share with you the state of the buildings and the systems within the district that were affected by the recent storms. On a macro scale, I would say almost every single one of our buildings was impacted in one way or another. Some were relatively minor, some were major. There were definitely a struggle for our department to identify the damages, mitigate those damages, repair failures, and return everything to service within a really short window of opportunity. I'm so thankful to our staff, our maintenance staff, their level of dedication and understanding of the importance of returning to service by Monday the 22nd. They really got in there and knocked everything out. So we're really blessed to have such a great staff. Before we really get into photos, and I'll kind of describe some of the major damages, I just wanted to make a couple observations. So our newer buildings, they're constructed using modern materials and modern construction standards. They actually seem to fare pretty well. Most of the issues that required repair for return to a service, they were isolated to utility failures. So they were caused by a loss of electricity, a loss of water service. The components required to make these repairs in the newer buildings, they're relatively easy to find. They mostly occurred due to the systems trying to protect themselves and shutting down. They sacrificed easily replaceable parts and provided protection to the systems overall as a whole. In contrast, our older buildings really, they sustained the heaviest damage, mostly due to systems that were exposed to harsh conditions. We had a lot of burst pipes that were uninsulated, penetrations through outside walls that didn't have kind of the modern sealant systems that you find in newer construction, equipment that didn't have robust safety features that would kind of shut themselves down or sacrifice easily replaceable parts. So these items really kind of contributed to the damage by the equipment and infrastructure within these older buildings. That being said, I'd like for you to kind of keep that in mind as we go through the discussions about what we're going to do with our facilities. So I'd like to start first with, looks like Waco High is our first slide. So the pictures that you're seeing there, the first one is the, well, let me get into the overall. So we had significant damage there at Waco High in multiple locations, and it's primarily due to exposed and aged equipment. The PAC received very heavy flooding damage, particularly in the auditorium and the surrounding hallways and classrooms, due to a rupture of the fire sprinkler system, components in the fire sprinkler system. As well, the HVAC equipment that's housed outside of the science wing, it suffered heavy damage due to exposure to the elements. We had some cracked pump housings. We had some boiler housings that were cracked, and so those things can no longer hold water when they're cracked. The hot water loop that serves the boilers for the main body of the building suffered some pretty significant piping ruptures in multiple areas, just due to age of those systems and really exposure. The first picture you see on the left, that is the hot water loop. So you can see the piping that's in there. You can see the insulation that's around it, that hot water loop. You can see there's a lot of corrosion in there. That is one of the main areas, and we have multiple areas that were like that. That kind of kept those boilers from coming on. It's just kind of ruptured and leaking water. The photo to the right with the circles around the couplers that are in there, those are repairs that we had to make, kind of the same issue. Those weren't exposed to outside elements, but they were contained in a mechanical building that isn't heated or insulated. Just, you can see it's just CMU building. And the last photo on the right, that's a pump housing that pushes the hot water through that loop. You can see at the bottom, it's cracked, and so that's leaking water. Next slide, please. So you can see, I'll get kind of to the picture on the right. So you can see the water that's standing there in the hallway. This was in multiple areas throughout the building due to that ruptured pipe and the sprinkler piping. Let's move on to the next campus. So this is Carver. So at Carver, the main was in exterior piping, making a penetration. We had a water line that ruptured. That flooded the gym. You can see the photos there of the gym floor. You can also see standing water there in our hallways, in the locker room areas. And you'll see a photo there of some wet ceiling tiles. So that's where we had kind of complications from ice and snow that's sitting on the roof. So the next campus, I think, is going to be Alta Vista. So Alta Vista was really heartbreaking for us. We had, again, outside water penetration coming into the building on an outside wall. That line ruptured. When it did that, it flooded the library. You can see the water standing there, the picture at the top right. It flooded several classrooms, 5 classrooms. And then the back hallway, probably the worst photo and the illustrative photo is the bottom left. If you look really close, you can kind of see water pouring outside of that foundation. That was due to all the water that was that infiltrated that building due to that ruptured pipe. So those are kind of our main damages, and so I really appreciate y'all giving me the opportunity to share those with you this evening. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. I want to just say thank you again to our facilities and maintenance team. They did a fantastic job. And we did have a good amount of damage, but it certainly could have been worse under the extreme temperatures that we experienced. So thank you. All right, Amy, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Okay, thank you. What a great opportunity to get that firsthand update for the community from Kevin and the district. Really appreciate that. And clearly the team's been hard at work, but obviously has a great program ongoing to keep those facilities in good shape. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Doug, who's going to talk to us about facility costs and building costs a little bit. And I think Doug and Casey may jump in as needed here as well. So Doug, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Amy. And so really what we're going to do is look at total project cost this evening, and I'll explain a little bit about what that is. But you'll see here on this slide, we've broken it out into 4 different categories. So really this is just a whole kind of collection of what goes into a project. And so you'll see at the top there, we broke it out into site costs, hard costs, and soft costs. And so when we think about a project and what goes into everything, we take all these different categories into consideration. And so that's when we combine all those together, that's what we call total project costs. So when we're looking at the costs for Waco High School, for example, in some of the subsequent slides, we're going to be talking about total project costs. And so that'll include things like, title, closing, geotechnical survey, demolition, that you'll see there over on under site costs. Hard costs, which is what you would is the visual, very easily understandable cost, which is your building, your foundations, your steel, your exterior walls, and your windows and everything. That's your hard costs, what make up the building. And then the soft costs are the remaining elements. So your furniture, chairs, desks, equipment that you put inside, as well as technology, and then also the development and design costs associated with that. Topographical surveys, testing, materials, moving from an old building into a new building, all that's captured under soft costs. And so if we go to the next slide, here is a good example of how we really do dive into the details of what is the percentage as we look at the CSI master spec breakdown of these different divisions. So these are all different divisions of what actually constructs a building. So all these different divisions have lots of different products, and they get specified, and you'll see there the breakdown is the percentage of each of those different categories. So we really do, we can break this down as at each project level very specifically to see exactly what that building cost is going to be. And so on the next slide here, you'll see as well, we do also track historically and regionally what high schools historically do and have costed in the past. And so this is just a chart showing that growth over the past several decades. And so the next 3 slides here, just going to go over really briefly what varying budgets are and how they're made up. So for example, here we're going to start in what we'll call the higher budget. And so a lot of things that you see with these higher budget high school facilities are turf competition and practice fields, the higher performance roofing systems, really taking the opportunity to maximize daylight and do some more unique things to really bring daylight into the campus. You'll see higher performing finishes such as polished concrete or terrazzo, LVT. The HVAC, the mechanical systems are often a little bit more expensive, but they're higher performing, they're more efficient, such as a chilled water system. Plumbing systems, not going with the super cheap pipe, but going with a more durable, cast iron plumbing. Electrical LED lighting is becoming pretty much a standard now across the board, and that does cost more, but we have seen LEDs come down quite a bit in the building industry. Landscape and outdoor is another good cost driver. Higher budgets typically incorporate a greater amount of landscape, and you'll see just some images there and examples at the bottom. If you want to go to the next slide, we can take a look at the medium budget. And so here, you'll see a couple differences. Maybe the competition field is turf and the rest of them are natural practice fields. That is a big cost factor in a lot of high schools. Roofing systems, sometimes you'll see going from a built-up roof to a single ply roof is something that, becomes a little more cost effective there. Focusing your daylight strategies and not having, larger expanses of glass. Your HVAC systems, switching from a chilled water to something different like a DX system. And so you can think of, as you're thinking of projects, and you'll see here in a little bit, Westwood High School is an example of that, as well as University High School as an example of buildings that incorporate some of these different components. And then there's also here on the slide the lower budget, and so this would be all natural athletic fields, going with a more budget-friendly roofing system such as TPO or other single ply, waxable floor finishes like VCT, or sealed concrete, something that's a little bit more easily constructed. Plumbing using CPVC as much as possible, and HVAC systems typically you see small package DX systems on these lower budget type campuses. And so looking at that, this Salado High School, which some of y'all may be familiar with, is a very efficient design and incorporates some of these cost saving strategies.
Yep. So Doug, we've got a few questions percolating in the chat, and then I did want to highlight that any estimates or numbers you see tonight, we're going with the mid-range cost, just making an assumption for now. We'll obviously have to continue discussions with the district about what's right about that or wrong, what way we want to sway, but any numbers you see tonight, we're picking middle of the road. We had a question come across in the first one I saw is with recent significant increases in construction costs, are those being counted for in the estimates? Yes, right now they're part of the contingency. We've been seeing a lot of variability across the different construction industries. Some are high, then they dip low, and vice versa. And so currently we're holding forth with these in the contingency, but when a project gets real, as in the bond passes and we're planning for it, then we'll get more real-time estimates from the contractors, because 6 months from now, things that are low right now might be high and vice versa. And so then we would use the current numbers in the estimate.
Absolutely. Thank you, Casey. And so as she mentioned, we're going to be looking at these costs, assuming the mid-range level budget. And so, were there any other questions in there, Casey? I'm sorry, I didn't have the chat.
No, that's fine. The other one is, what is DX? You want to tackle that one?
So there's a couple different types of mechanical systems, and basically a chilled water system, which was noted on the higher budget, uses like a central plant, which would be a central mechanical space to distribute. And DX, and Jared, you may be able to chime in and help me out here. But it's yeah, thank you, Amelia. It's basically an individual unit for the spaces served, and so you have a number of these. On a high school, you could have anywhere from 50 to 100 or even more, depending on how big your campus is. But it's a more cost-effective mechanical solution.
Yeah, and then another question that we had come across is, does the land cost assume that there will be a location change? great question. We are going to come up with a couple different options here to be discussed, and you can always come up with more. So in any of the scenarios that suggest a land change, that cost is assumed with that. Absolutely.
And to be clear, that slide before, it was just showing kind of a typical condition. So assuming you were purchasing, a new site and building on it, that site cost incorporates the land cost there. So it's not to say that that necessarily applies to Waco High School, for example, but it was just more as a general kind of here's what falls into those categories. And Dr. Kincannon, I saw your question there. We are also including inflation, so we're assuming construction costs and using an inflation number as well, to make sure we're tracking with how costs have risen historically.
Great.
Great questions. Thank you.
In the interest of time, we'll keep moving along, and then we'll circle back at the end of the meeting or parking lot some of these additional questions. And so, Doug, I think I have the next. Oh no, Amy's got the next one.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Thanks, Doug. So next up, we're going to share some information on 3 projects that parallel the high school options that we've been discussing about Waco High and that we're discussing tonight. And these are just to provide you some relevant context or case studies, if you will. So, they're just to give you some background information and foundation. These projects represent some experience that O'Connell Robertson has had, including work with Dr. Kincannon. So the first one we want to talk about is Lake Belton High School. And this project was a new comprehensive 9th through 12th grade campus on a greenfield site. So this design process involved a group of stakeholders comprised of district staff, and it involved a significant discussion early in design around programs offered at the existing high school and then this new high school in order to determine what would be best for the overall district and all high school students. It also offered the opportunity for new kinds of teaching and learning spaces by being a whole new campus. And you will see from other examples presented, there's an ease of design planning and construction when you are on a green site that can create a faster and a smoother construction process. So you see here some images of this facility. It was almost 400,000 square feet. It was on 80 acres, so lots of room to spread out, as you can see from the site plan on, I think it's on your right, or is it on your left? It's on my right in view.
On the right, yeah.
Okay, good, thank you. So you can see how much room there was to spread out on 80 acres. It also was a single phase. So this whole campus was built with the funds from one bond election. And the design took 15 months. It's a very large facility, and construction took 24 months. So you can go to the next slide. And I think is there something else? Yeah, there's some other images. So what this campus had is a real focus on collaboration and flexibility within the learning spaces. It provided an opportunity for some additional and new CTE spaces in the district for high school students. It also offered the opportunity for varied size learning spaces since there weren't existing walls that had to be accommodated, right? It was a brand new facility. And then as you can see from this picture here, the big picture, some large flexible spaces for multi-use, which also offered a more flexible dining solution. So Dr. Kincannon, I don't know if you want to add anything on just overall comments about building on a new greenfield site or this project. Otherwise, I was going to move on to the next one.
Oh, I am just really proud of this building. There was a lot of input into the design of the facility, and I know you can't tell by this picture, but this is actually a smaller dining space than you might actually find in a high school that's built for 2,500 students. One of the innovative things that we did in this building was to disperse dining. So there are a couple of other places out in the classroom where there are meal service areas so that we begin to break down this big group traditional style setting cafeteria. And so it's a really fascinating building, and I'm hoping that that some of us at least can take a tour of it one day.
Great, thank you. And thanks, Angela, for supporting me on my abbreviations. CTE is Career and Technology Education, and the new facility allowed for just, any kind of opportunity for setting up some new programs in that area, again, because there weren't constraints. Let's go on to the next project. We're going to talk about a different type of situation, and that is a replacement facility. So this next campus is the Ann Richards School for Young Women in Austin. And this was a modernization project where we designed a replacement 6th through 12th grade campus for all girls on an existing active school site. So this project began as a potential renovation modernization, but shifted during early planning conversations to the need to design and build a whole new replacement school, mainly because the existing concrete block walls just weren't going to accommodate some of the new teaching and learning styles that were happening in the school. And if they had the opportunity, this new facility allowed us to tailor the educational environment to the unique curriculum and instructional methodology at the Ann Richards School. Early planning involved detailed conversations around phasing on the occupied site. So that was a key to the process. So there was master planning, and safety and security was a really high priority because of all the activity, as well as the impact on the surrounding neighborhood had to be considered. So the existing
Jenny, I got in, but I can't get any audio out of this.
The existing campus was 126,000 square feet, and the new campus is pushing 200,000 square feet. So all of this occurred on the occupied site of, as you can see here on the slide, 14.6 acres or about 15 acres. You're going to see a better picture of that here. So if you look at the photo on the left, the image on the left of your slide, that was the existing campus, that kind of H-shaped building that's in the lower part of that site plan. The new building was designed here in the middle picture to just kind of nestle into part of that existing facility on the site. And then what will happen in the third image, you will see the old building will get demolished, and that is where the new track and field will go. And so, curriculum. There was an innovative library concept that was part of this campus. They have a very strong culture of making, so they have a lot of maker spaces within this building, and there was a strong focus on collaboration and flexibility. And if you want to see some construction phasing images, we can look at the next couple slides. You want to go ahead and advance. So here you can see, this is the new campus in the front of this image, but the old campus is in the, what would be the top. Here, the old campus is in the top left, kind of, again, nestled around. And then I think we have one more, maybe. There we go. Can you see? So here you can see again how close from this site plan, how close this building got inside this band hall here. Okay, let's go on to the next one. I'm timing myself, Doug. So this third option is a renovated facility. So this is another really interesting example. And this is Westwood High School in Round Rock ISD. And this was a comprehensive master planned phased improvement for a 350,000 square foot campus on 29 acres. And these 29 acres weren't adjoining. They were, a part of it was across the street from another part of the campus. When we started working on this project initially and developed a master plan, I believe the campus only had about 260,000 square feet. So we've had multiple additions on the campus, as well as renovated and touched basically every building by this time. The campus and building improvements addressed growth, They addressed equity across all the district high schools to get Westwood up to par with the others, and educational delivery. So some new spaces that accommodated innovative teaching programs and career and technology programs they had going on. This project is different in that it has involved 4 significant phases, with the 4th phase currently in construction, and multiple bond programs to fund these phases. So you can see here from this graphic on the screen, this project has basically been under construction for 15 years. Phase 1 and 2 rolled together fairly seamlessly between bond programs. And so the team kept working there, but there was a pause between phases 2 and 3 until another bond election was passed. And then there was a pause between phase 3 and 4, waiting on a bond to pass for that 4th phase. So there have been significant daily impacts across the years on this campus that involved everything from putting 400 more parking spots on the campus to get students out of the neighborhood from parking on the streets, to rerouting traffic twice during this phase for parent drop-off and buses, moving students into portables temporarily until they could move back onto the campus, and then coordinated construction work with the principal at a very, very high level. I might also add that there have been 3 different principals at this campus during this time of these multiple phases. And really the key to success here is communication and collaboration. It absolutely can be done. This is a very successful academic campus. And so there's a high priority on not impacting the learning for students. And so everything was really timed and coordinated around testing dates and other, spring break and winter break and summer break. There were major construction phasing efforts that would happen during that time period, and then bring the students back, and the cafeteria might be in a different place than it was before the holidays started. So a complex route for sure, but absolutely doable, and work that could go on and result in spaces like you see here, where on the top you can see the picture of an exterior corridor that then became enclosed to provide some common areas. This campus also has received a new central plant and complete HVAC and electrical upgrades throughout the process, has added fine arts spaces and athletic spaces and common areas, and has a very large library that is a central point for the whole campus. So a lot can be done under this methodology. So really, we wanted to present to you tonight these 3 different examples of how you might approach a major high school, innovation on an existing campus. So with that, I think, Casey, is this where you are going to jump in with Dina and talk about?
There are a couple of questions, Amy,
Okay.
you might want to answer.
Yeah, so I was starting to get to those. The first one I saw is Ann Richards. So Ann Richards, the core of the school opened up in December of 2020, and many of the students moved over, and students and faculty moved over in January, over that winter break. They're still wrapping up a few finishing touches inside the building. And now that all the students and teachers and faculty are in the new building, they're now going to begin the process of demolishing the old building and going back in and doing the other site improvements associated with it.
So basically it was just completed in January. The students moved in for the first time.
Yeah. And then there was a question for Westwood. It was related to, was there a plan in place for Westwood if any of the bond programs had not passed?
Sure. Well, I would say that the master plan is key to the subsequent phasing of a project. And so the initial master plan that was developed in 2008 was followed very closely until phase 4. And again, phase 4, we were on the 3rd principle since the initial master plan, and a few things had changed. But the master plan was additionally created to support ensuring that one phase can be completed and can be successful and provide value without the next phase potentially happening for a while. So I would say that was the plan, is to break up the master plan into phases that can kind of stand on their own if it stops there for a period of time, or that can just move right into the next phase. And truth be told, there was a failed bond in between phase 3 and phase 4. And so the district went back out and passed the bond, and phase 4 is now happening. So that would be kind of how you want to set up your master plan, is so that any phase can stand on its own and add value and bring a lot to the campus, and isn't contingent on the next phase happening. But of course, the next phase is going to provide a next level of value. So you have to prioritize your phases, and that's just part of the process. And I did see another question about cost, and if this option is more expensive. Well, as costs pretty much always are going to rise out into the future, it's more expensive because of that. And then complexity around phasing, can add cost.
I think on the Westwood campus, which I had the opportunity to tour, I wasn't a part of these projects, but I think because there was limited land from which to work, and there was so much work to be done, that phasing made sense because they were able to keep the campus open throughout the process.
Yep,
That's absolutely right.
that was a huge motivator there. Great. So if we could move on to the next section, if you want to advance the slide, Jessica. Thanks. And so I'm going to get us started here, and then I'm going to hand it over to Dina in a minute. So this last section, before we get to the high school design options, sort of fun stuff, setting some additional framework here for you. And so when we consider design options or plan options, master plan, when we look at things long term, we want to look at a variety of things, everything from how does this impact or support our educational delivery pedagogy. We also want to talk about, we heard about for elementary schools, what's the difference between a small local school versus a larger district school, sort of both functionally and economically. And then you also talk about, what's the state of the facility? How old is it? Those types of elements. So the 8 lenses that we continue to use as the design team and with the executive committee, we're not going to go through all 8 of these with you. I mean, we don't have all night. I could entertain you if you want to stay extra. We're going to dive deeper, loosely into a few of these. So I'm going to if we could go to the next slide, I'm going to let Dina talk us through a few slides here, and then I'll come back. Oh, sorry, I lied. I'm going to do this one first. And so this is just a refresher. You're all from Waco and you're familiar with Waco. The 2 comprehensive high schools are Waco High School, shown here in the pink region, and then University High School, shown in the purple region. You also have quite a few supporting facilities. Besides Guaca and Guama, you also have Brazos and Wiley, and you've got a few other ancillary type campuses. And so we don't want to forget those. Waco and University are the largest, and that's what we'll be talking a lot about, but we do have some other supporting facilities. So we could go to the next slide. And Dina, do you want to talk to us a little bit about sort of goals in the district?
Sure. Okay, I want to take us back for just a second to our meeting. I think this might have been meeting 2.
Yes.
When we were talking about our skills that are needed for the workforce. And we looked at skills that were prioritized in 2015, and then how that list had changed in just 5 years. And so looking at complex problem solving, remember that was still on top, but critical thinking had moved up, as had creativity. And so something that was said a little bit ago, as we were presenting all of the different schools and different rebuilds or updates that had been made, I heard the word opportunity mentioned, and that they wanted to provide the opportunity for teachers and students to teach and learn in different ways, to meet our current needs. And I think that's the goal as we're looking at this, is we want to provide, our students with the best possible, and our teachers as well, so that they have the opportunity to engage in learning that will hopefully develop and lead to the skills that we have on the right. Go ahead. So during that presentation, I also showed you the learning pyramid. And what we talked about during that time was that we only retain about 5% of what we learn through lecture. And so we might think of that as a student sitting in a desk, a teacher in the front of the class, and teaching as students listen with some independent work. That's basically it. And so as we go down, we see at the bottom, at the 90% level, that students learn and retain more, and us as well, when we're able to teach others. And then 75% practice by doing and having discussion and demonstration. So we want to look and think about how our learning environments and our facilities can help our teachers teach in this way. So we also talked about some key attributes that we really want to focus on and develop in our students as they progress through school and then into graduation and the workforce. And so the ultimate goal is for our students to be creative problem solvers, as we saw in the other list. We want them to be skillful team members. So how do we work with others? How do we negotiate that situation? And use our critical thinking skills during those times. We want our students to be effective communicators and have opportunities to communicate in different ways to develop those skills. So whether it's technology or in groups, communicating with people in different places even. Ultimately, though, when we put all of these things together, we really want to develop students who are lifelong learners so that when they leave us, they are knowledgeable and understand how to not only consume information, but also produce information for others who need it. And then being able to discern when they're looking at, whether it's additional learning or looking at media, that they're able to discern what's good for them. What do they need to go forward and to improve their life and to help others? And so all of that starts with content knowledge, and then we stack these other skills on top of that to help them use that knowledge to then navigate their world. And then ultimately, of course, hopefully this leads to our students being informed citizens. Go ahead. So then, if producing students who are lifelong learners is our ultimate goal, then what do we need to do to develop that? So we're going to talk about very quickly 4 attributes of that. So the first one is ability to collaborate, and then secondly, ability to be self-directed, the ability to integrate critical thinking, and then an appreciation of creativity and imagination. Go ahead. So let's look first at the ability to collaborate with others and work with diverse teams and a variety of contexts. So what you see on the screen here on the left is a current picture of one of our classrooms at Waco High School. And then what you see on the right is a picture of a classroom from a school that is newer and more modern. And so as it says at the top, it says students learn in various ways. And we want to be able to meet their needs, which means that we're able to manipulate and create an environment to meet those needs. So sometimes students might be working alone, sometimes in groups, sometimes even in different places throughout the school building. And so replacing outdated learning environments that are geared toward stationary front-facing instruction. So when we were looking at that learning triangle, and we were talking about the lecture, just the sit and kind of receive information, being able to replace that with flexible learning spaces for students and teachers so that would provide the foundation necessary to educate students in multiple ways and increase mastery of content. One of the things, if you don't readily notice it in the picture on the right, that actually in the middle there's a wall, a dividing wall. And so that wall can be moved. And we have 2 classrooms there that could be opened up into one. And then we also see that wall is also a wall that can be used to display. It can be used to write things on. The furniture is movable. And so there's just many opportunities to do different things in this type of learning environment as teachers design lessons. Okay. All right. Now we're going to think about the ability to be self-directed, and we want students to be able to apply content and knowledge in new and different ways. So as our students take in information, how do they apply that and make meaning of it? And so we want them to be able to have an opportunity to do that in multiple ways. And so a tech-enabled facility that includes versatile learning spaces across the campus would provide an opportunity for students to engage in robust learning experiences that are currently not available. So we talked a lot about, in different groups at various times over these meetings, about our libraries. We talked about having community meeting spaces and places where students can get together, for different purposes. And so on the left, you'll see a current library. Now, I will say we have some new furniture in there, which is definitely an upgrade. However, when we look at the picture on the right, this is a picture outside of a classroom. You see the classroom there in the background with those kind of glass windows. But there are opportunities for students to group and work together out in that kind of common area. You see the student that's there writing, composing something on the wall. Across the way, there are more students, and then there's a projector there from the ceiling, so that if students actually wanted to hook in a computer to that and project something on a wall as they worked through a presentation or plan to do who knows what, the sky's the limit. And so really, again, just offering the opportunity for teachers to design those innovative lessons and for our students to really engage in learning in a way that they just currently aren't able to do. Okay, one more. Okay, and then the ability to integrate critical thinking, problem solving, and information literacy skills. So our facilities that are equipped to support teaching and learning that prepare students to encounter more complex life and work experiences will provide opportunities for students to apply learning in more meaningful ways. When we think about this, this kind of feeds into many different spaces. So whether it's our CTE spaces, it could even be some of our extracurricular spaces. What you're looking at here actually on the left is a picture of a functional academics classroom, but it's the kitchen. And so the intent there would be to work with our students on life skills and learning how to use the kitchen and appliances and different things so that when they're in, at home or in the community, they're able to transfer those skills. And I'm told that actually that we don't use the appliances in the kitchen very much, and that we're really trying to integrate it more. But let's look at the picture on the right. What if we were able to offer an environment like that for our students to work in and for teachers to use to design these types of lessons? And so I think that's what we're thinking about. The spaces that are available, we want them to be innovating, but we also want them to inspire our students and inspire our teachers, which leads us to the last slide. Go ahead. So appreciation of creativity and imagination. So facilities that are designed to inspire would provide an effective foundation for teachers to cultivate and nurture students' creativity, imagination, and their unique talents. So this could be, when we're thinking about this, we're thinking about fine arts. We're thinking about, again, our extracurriculars. Even it could be our CTE spaces, but really spaces where students want to be. Not, oh, I have to go to school, but I want to go to school. I have this awesome, classroom or this kitchen or this whatever that I'm going to be able to go in and really apply what it is that I'm learning. And so here we have on the left a picture of a theater classroom, and then on the right, this is actually a picture from I saw it in one of the the slides that we showed earlier from one of the campuses as they were redesigning a school. And so ultimately that's, I think that's the goal. We want our students to have the best and we want our teachers to have the best. And so thinking about what we can do to make that happen.
Great. So
right.
Jessica, if you could go forward 2 slides. Yep. Thanks. And so Dina did an excellent, go back 1, please. Dina did a great job explaining one of the lenses, which is about curriculum and instruction. And then, we always want to keep that in the forefront because, we can modernize, we can update building systems all we want, but if we're not being able to deliver, the quality education that Waco ISD does deliver, we want to think critically about that. Another item I just wanted to get on your radar is we've talked about district demographics and growth and decline in the district. And so what you can see up in the top in the color coded is your district high schools and support high schools. That's your detention center, your challenge academy, your Wiley. And then in the gold bar, it's highlighting the current student enrollment. And then as it moves to the right of the screen, you can see each year sort of what's being predicted. And obviously the next couple of years, that's a little bit easier to predict, but then as you go out farther. What you're not seeing here is Waco and Guama. Those are high school support facilities, but those students are accounted for back in their assigned their parent high school. There's probably a better name for that, but their core high school. And so those students are accounted for in their core campuses. And so when we look at what the district is right now, and so we see in our snapshot for fall of 2020, we're at about 4,200 in the total between all the campuses. And we've actually got a built capacity of 5,000. And that was something we reviewed last meeting. If we have questions about this, we can come back to it. But essentially, we've got a little bit of extra space. So when we're talking about potentially renovating or replacing or doing something with the existing high schools, we have some room here. And so if we were to say, all right, Brazos stays at 200 capacity, we don't see that changing drastically over the next 10 plus years. If we take University High School and keep the exact same capacity, which you can see from the demographics that supports that population. If we say, if we're going to do anything at Waco High School, we don't necessarily need to match their existing capacity of 2,400 and change. We could go down to 2,100. We can match essentially University High School. All right, and then the next slide here. And then also, just putting back on your radar, we talked a little bit about this in the past. Part of the prep work that the district did in preparation for this activity or for this long-range facilities master plan is they looked critically, they hired a consultant and went into every single school and evaluated what is needed bare minimum over the next 10 plus years to keep this building operational. And they're considering a like for like replacement. So they're looking at, all right, so our interior doors, they're just not up to par, they're deteriorating, we need to update those. Our HVAC equipment, it's gonna hit the end of its useful life over the next little bit. And so they've categorized those into the buckets, low, medium, and high, and assigned some dollars with that, and then we escalated it out. And so the chart at the bottom, you can see project costs. And so if you were to do all of the things needed for Waco High School specifically for the next 13 years, just pick that horizon, that's when the useful life starts to deteriorate there, to do all of the things. And this is just to bring the building up to suitability. It does not address any of the educational or it does not support modern teaching environments. It doesn't add that level of transparency. It doesn't add that level of flexibility, et cetera. That's going to be $75 million to get Waco High School up to baseline over the next couple years. So it's a pretty big number to think about. And then if we could go to the next slide. And for those of us that aren't really into the numbers, it gets a little overwhelming. We've created just a very simple chart here. So along the bottom from left to right is facilities condition assessment. That's the cost related to how expensive it would be to address the age, the condition, the useful life of a building. That's replacing your windows. That's replacing your plumbing fixtures, your HVAC systems. So items over to the left, according to the chart here, are the needs of most concern, and items over to the right are on the better end of the spectrum. So obviously you can see University of High School is over here on the right. I mean, that's a newer facility. That makes sense. Check, we understand that. Over on the vertical column, that's the educational suitability assessment. Those are the things Dina talked a bit about, and that's, is the building supporting the educational environment? And so that's talking about flexibility of spaces, of furniture. That's talking about better lighting, controllable lighting, better acoustics. And so the things towards the bottom of the chart are not doing great in that regard, and things towards the top of the chart are doing better. And so if you look at that, what you see pops out is sort of Waco High School over to the middle left grid, and then you see University High School up to the top right, and then you see the other support facilities sort of balancing out in the middle. That's not to say any of those things don't need support, but what this is indicating to us is that Waco High School is in the most dire condition comparative to other Waco High School facilities. So then if we can go to the next slide. And now we've got a couple of different options to go over. Before we go over to the options, did we have any questions on sort of the lenses for consideration, the capacity, conditions assessment? It's a lot of things thrown at you.
I think it might be a good time for me to talk about the PTEC slide. I think we skipped over that one.
Yes, I didn't have any. Yes, we can talk about it. We can go back a slide. It's just a blank slide. We didn't have any notes to add in.
Okay, I just, it was an opportunity for me to keep going. There you go. Just to mention that today the district received notification that we received a PTEC planning grant from the state. And I wanted to explain what a PTEC school is and let you know that it's something we're just beginning. It wouldn't necessarily be a factor in this work that we're doing today, but it may be something that impacts us for the future. So back in 2019 in December, we had a design thinking session with community partners and teachers and district personnel. And we were working on teacher retention concerns within Waco ISD. And as a part of that conversation, we came up with some ideas. Each of our groups were tasked with coming up with a creative way to address our teacher pipeline. And I ended up in a group that worked on an idea to develop basically an early college high school, but it's a PTEC program, which is a program to have students get an associate's degree while they're in high school and then move right into their the rest of their bachelor's program. And what we talked about was what's unique about PTEC is that there's a partnership typically with industry. In this case, the school district would be the partner, and we would collaborate with MCC on the development of teachers. So it would be a teaching and learning education associate's degree so that students would graduate from MCC and go right into the programs at Tech or Tarleton State University that are already at MCC. So it was a fantastic conversation. We talked about courses and how we might proceed with that. And then my staff, Donna McKethan and Robin Wilson and Dina Kornblum, wrote the planning grant for that. And that's what we received notification of today. And I'm really excited about that. I could even see that eventually being a small high school on the MCC campus where students have that connection to the high school staff, and then they're going right out to their college campuses. So that's something we're building towards, and I just wanted you all to know about it in case you heard about that in the near future. Thank you.
Nice work. Congrats.
Thank you.
And then we're gonna bring Doug back in, and Doug's gonna talk about sort of some options we've come up with for Waco High School. And then at the end of this, we're gonna do an activity to sort of listen to what you've got on your minds.
All right, thanks, Casey. All right, so I'm gonna try to go through these pretty briefly here, so we have as much time as we can to discuss. So we'll get to the end and just see if anyone has any questions here at the end. And so there's 4 options we're going to look at, and the first one here is maintaining systems. And so this would be that number, that Waco High School number that Casey mentioned before, to just address the building itself. And so that would be replacing mechanical systems, re-roofing the building, replacing doors or things like that that are broken or needing replacement. And so for the next 15 years, this option would address those items as needed, as they either as they fail or as they as they reach their end of useful life and need to be replaced. This option would not impact, as Casey mentioned, educational space. So it's not the Westwood option where we go in and renovate the whole space and provide bigger size classrooms or a different library. This would simply be just replacement of systems to keep the building functional. So Waco High School would stay as is. This would roughly take anywhere from about 13 to 15 years based on that facility conditions assessment and based on those numbers. And it would likely be several phases over the course of that time. And so that number there you see is about 70 to 80 million. So yeah, you can go to option 2 now, sorry. Option 2 here would be renovate. And so this would be much more similar to that Westwood example that we looked at. So this would include not just replacement and maintaining the systems, but it would be actually improving some of those systems, as well as providing appropriate educational spaces within the building. Likely for the campus of this size, somewhere between 5 and 6 phases. And again, that's definitely several years, 4 or more of construction timeline based on those phases. And you'll see there kind of towards the bottom on the left. And a renovation like this for a campus this size is anywhere from 125 to 155 million. And really that just depends on the scope and the intensity of some of the renovations, and if there's any facilities that may be kept versus being completely renovated or replaced. So again, this is more similar to that Westwood option. And then if we look at number 3, this would be a replacement. So this would be very similar to the Ann Richards option that we looked at. So you'll see there with the incorporation of the property east of the current Waco High School site, there would be space to construct a new facility, just like that previous example we saw. And so this would be not directly impacting the high school or not entirely impacting the existing high school during construction. So they would have that opportunity to stay in the building during construction while a new facility is constructed on the east side there. And we could look at, if there are facilities on campus, such as the auditorium or, maybe some of the other outbuildings that, are still valuable and maintainable, we could look at maintaining some of those as well. And this would be about the 3-year timeline of phase construction, and maybe a little longer if you include some of the demo that would happen of the existing building. And that's anywhere from 140 to $150 million. And then option 4 was discussed briefly, but again, it's a bit of a challenge. This would be if there was a greenfield site in the area that would be served for Waco High School. It would be looking at about 80 acres. to support the needs of the campus. And really the challenge there is there has not been that type of site found yet that is within the boundaries of where Waco High School would be needed to be located. So really, when we look at this summary slide here, I think there's another one after this option 4, that option 4 really isn't feasible, but just wanted to kind of show the comparison of what that would be. And so again, really the 3 main being your baseline option of just maintaining the facility, the second option of renovate to improve the educational environment, and the third to replace on site. And so really quickly, before we move into the activity, I just wanted to make sure, does anyone have any questions just about the options themselves and what they incorporate?
This is Casey. I misspoke earlier. Someone had asked if site costs are included. I forgot that we removed them out of here so we could compare apples to apples here. And
Gotcha.
so
Thanks,
option 3 or option 4, what did we say? Option 4, not feasible. On the previous slide, did we list site costs?
No, not on the previous slide. I think the site costs in the beginning, it was just under the category.
So Waco option 4 says total project cost 150 million to 155 million. This would be for the building on a site. This does not include the site costs here. But then on the next slide, is everyone aware that the Lake Air Montessori, and not Lake Air Montessori, the Lake Air fields that are adjacent to the high school, we're considering there would be no cost associated with that. Is that correct, Dr. Kincannon?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Are you ready to take questions?
Sure. Yeah.
This is Dr. Henry. I just would like to see those individual slides one more time.
Sure. Yeah, Jessica, if you want to flip back to 2 and we can kind of go through them. Or 1, sorry, thank you. So really, the difference, there's not really a difference graphically between 1 and 2. It's mainly the information on the left. So option 1 is maintaining the systems there. And that has a $70 to $80 million cost.
So I'm sorry. So when you say maintain the facility, you mean like don't improve it, or am I misunderstanding?
Correct. It would be addressing those facility conditions assessment items as they arise over the next 15 years. So it would not be improving the educational space.
Yeah, that means replacing the roof as it deteriorates. That means putting in new windows as needed. That does not include like new furnishing for the classrooms or operable partitions between spaces, all of that stuff.
Okay, thank you.
So then option 2 is would be doing those things. So would be renovating the entire campus. So this would be going in and totally gutting a space and providing a new library, or expanding the cafeteria, or redoing all of the locker rooms and things like that. That's what this option 2 would incorporate.
Okay.
But it would be within the existing facility. So it would not provide a new high school facility.
And that would be how many phases do you?
We're thinking probably somewhere around 5 phases of construction, and so at least I'd say 4 or more, if not 5 or 6 years of construction timeline in terms of those phases.
But Doug, this is one design process and one big project that just gets phased for construction over time in order to keep the kids on the campus, correct?
Right. So it wouldn't be that you'd have 5 different design, timelines and schedules. It would be, here's your project, and then, okay, here's what we can accomplish in phase 1. And that, takes into consideration where the students would be while that, first section of the school is shut down for construction. And then the next phase would kick on, and then those students would be able to move into the new part And then you would kind of walk your way through the campus to replace and renovate those spaces over time.
In this phase, I'm sorry, this is Ilda Sabito. In this phase, is the square footage, is there any difference in that?
For planning purposes, no.
Okay.
Generally, we're considering it would just be renovations to the facility. Now, within this, 125 to 155 million kind of range, sure, we could look at, there would be some consideration, if there's any expansions needed or anything like that.
Or Doug, could this budget accommodate something that might involve like a new addition, a small addition somewhere, or a new building for a certain purpose, and then demolition of another building?
Potentially, yeah, it could incorporate, some small replacement areas, or like I said, like maybe the locker room needs an expansion, or there needs to be an additional dance studio or an additional performing and fine arts rehearsal space or things like that. That could fall under this option. But generally it would be very specific and not, oh, we're going to replace the entire academic neighborhood with a new building. That would be more along the lines of the third option.
So question on the option 3, would that still only be 2 levels, or you talking about building up more, like maybe 3 stories? I mean, you can only see so much from a bird's eye view, so I didn't know.
Could you go
Can
to
you
the
move
next
forward
slide?
to option 3 on the slides? I think that's what his question.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So we would look at that as we get into the design phase a little bit further. I'll say, just from a really quick high level planning standpoint, it is achievable with 2 stories. So there is room on site to do it in 2 stories. 3-story buildings tend to be a little bit more challenging when you get in. There's some code implications when you get to 3 stories, and structurally there's some more considerations as the building gets taller. And so that, it's certainly possible. But, typically we're seeing, 2 stories is pretty common. And there are lots of 3 stories out there. It just does sort of start to insert some challenges with code.
Okay.
So in the number 3, are you saying that the Waco High building, while maintaining the auditorium, that would be the only space that the school would occupy?
No, so it would be, the construction process would be, the existing high school, the entire high school as it is, would stay online and operational during construction of the new facility. So the new facility would basically be built and fenced off. So there would be a totally separate construction area.
No, I understand that. The question that I'm asking is, would the new building then constitute the high school? So what happens to the other older existent building? That's what I'm a little bit confused.
Yeah, sorry. So at the end of construction, it would get demolished, and the other functions, the site components like the bus drop off, outdoor courtyard space, practice fields, things like that would fill in that area. So the new high school in option 3 would be the entire new high school, and the old facilities would be demolished.
So where it now says bus drop off, service access, that's where the old high school would have been.
Correct.
So my question is, are we creating additional space on the new site? I think that's the question that Mr. Stewart is also asking. It doesn't seem to be much bigger. Would it be?
Yeah, I can answer that one. So with the 3-way agreement with the county as a part of the venue project, the school district is picking up that strip to the right where you see the new Waco High School campus from top to bottom, where it says parking all the way to the bottom, is about 12 acres. So the Waco High School campus size will be growing. With any option, it can grow because we've already signed that agreement.
And so what is that street? Is that Cobb that we're looking at?
Oh, I don't know what's the street in front of Waco High School?
42nd.
42nd, and so it's between 42nd and New Road.
Oh, that's New Road that's out there. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you're saying that would take in, that's where the baseball fields are.
Correct. Those are the Little League fields.
And we get all of that.
And we get all of that. And then the board has already approved the new Paul Tyson field that you see in the top left-hand corner. And so it's moving over from the county's property over to the high school campus.
Okay. And that's where it says, so it would move from there to where it says the practice field?
No, it says Paul Tyson Field at the top. That's
okay.
Baseball and softball fields, and they're moving across the street. So we've just done
over to there. Okay, I got you.
We've done some swapping.
So in answer to my question, you're saying that yes, because we've been talking about making sure that we build for expansion so that we don't get to capacity in the next, 10 years after that. So you're saying that yes, we are it will be a bigger high school if we choose that option.
No, the size of the school is planned for 2150. We have the slides in earlier that shows our capacity, and so we have plenty of space. Space is our problem. It's the use of the spaces that we have and improving those spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
So the demographics slide that we went over last meeting and then again briefly this meeting show that total high school population for the next 10 plus years is going to be a maximum 4,100. But with making this campus this new size potentially of 2150 to match University High School, we'd still be providing 4,500 seats in the district. And so we're going way over even what the demographics are projecting as future. If that helps.
Okay, we're keep moving because we're almost to 8 and we have a group activity.
Yes. Great questions, and good conversation. So we do have an activity here. So it's a kind of a three-part activity here. And the very first thing is we're going to do I'll call it a blind poll of the options. And so everyone will have an opportunity to select an option, and it would be, what is the option that you prefer? And I'll ask if we just want to hold the results until everyone, don't display the results until people have gotten them in.
Yeah, maybe wait 30 seconds or a minute.
Yeah. And then we will break into small groups and just have that opportunity for everyone to discuss the options and just any thoughts that you have as far as Waco High School. And then we'll come back and there will be a designated person from each group that will do a very quick, call it, 30 to 60 second report on the group's discussion. And from there, we will poll again just to see kind of where everyone landed after the discussion. So, Casey, did I miss anything there?
Nope, you got it.
Hey, Doug. I was just going to add that the designated people in each of the breakouts are the O'Connell-Robertson team members.
Oh, right. Thank you.
That are going to facilitate the discussion to make sure we have time to talk about all the topics. And then we're going to do the reporting out. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yes, thank you. Okay. I forgot to mention that. So yes, we will be listening and taking notes, and then we will report back.
We'll go ahead and start because apparently we may or may not have forgotten a poll, but if we disappear, I think we're coming back to the same group. And so the poll was simply going to ask, do you have a preferred option? Do you think just addressing the facilities conditions is the right strategy for Waco High School and Waco ISD ultimately? Option 2 was, do you think renovating it, and that's just keeping it roughly the same size and just bringing, the educational environments as well as the physical environments up to modern standards? Option 3 was, hold on, I'm getting a message here. And option 3 was to replace Waco High School, and that's sorry, I got mixed up. I apologize. So option one, sorry, you guys, I'm tired. So option one was to maintain systems, and that's just to address the boiler, the new windows, a deteriorating roof, etc. Option two was to renovate the high school. And so that addresses some of the facilities, but doesn't really grow too much. That's more like just a basic renovation. And then replacement is sort of more going gradually over multiple phases. That's more like a Westwood and bringing it more comprehensively. And then option four was originally a greenfield site, but we were also going to open it up if anyone had any other ideas. So I was going to sort of let you guys, if anyone wants to jump on something and talk a little bit about it.
If a greenfield site isn't available, I would say option three is the only thing I can think of, because we've been in this building. It's been, my sister graduated from here in '87 when it was first consolidated, and it was here before that. It was Richfield. So
I graduated in '80, yeah.
And it's an old building.
It was built
We have our certain
60s,
challenges.
right?
Ma'am?
It was built in the early 60s or late 50s, correct?
Correct.
My
Yeah,
brother-in-law graduated in '65, and I think he was the first class to go all the way through the building. So 62, 63.
Option three.
I agree, option three.
Option three, and that's the one where we sort of build a replacement on site. It would still be phased. You know, we were really struggling with the greenfield, just finding 80 plus acres in your fast.
I saw 40, about 43 or 44 off of Lake Shore, but I haven't seen anything that's much larger than that.
Why 80
probably already owned.
Why 80 acres if it's currently going to be on 42?
Well, 42 is what we have available, but when you get into, we could make it work, but when you talk about a new facility, for example, like Belton High School, or Lake Belton High School, excuse me, by the time you get all your fields and your associated parking and clearances around all those things, you're kind of grandfathered into your site as it is, because it's been there for a while, and you don't have to bring some of that other stuff up to standard. It's not cheating the system, it's just working with it. Yeah,
I mean, I wonder if the old stadium, the old Floyd Casey Stadium property was available, but that's so close to university anyway. You know, had that been snatched up. I mean, in my view, if it's between option 2 and 3, then 3 makes sense because they both cost very similarly. So why not have a brand new facility for students to take pride in and be able to do much more? But that's just.
Casey, I have a question for you. I put it in the chat, but I don't think we kind of got switched over.
Yeah, we all got.
I saw that the gyms, like the gyms and tennis courts and stuff that we currently have, was placed by or replaced by practice fields. But that wasn't discussed or shown on option 3. So is that going to be phased into the new building, or is it going to be spaced out like it is currently now?
To be determined. I don't know what we have to work with this group or other groups, you know, to determine the appropriate phasing. But ultimately, I mean, if you think about in context, we can build fairly easily on the lake air fields, you know, without disturbing the current campus. So really it would come down to a discussion, what's least disturbing to the population. You know, if we were to build a replacement high school there, you could conceptually not disrupt as much of the existing high school during the construction. Whereas if you were able to go to a renovated one where you're in the building, you kind of have to shut down a quarter of or a third of the campus at a time. So as for the practice field and tennis field, the idea would be to do the one that's least destructive or in the order that's least destructive. And like, for example, the new Paul Tyson field, we would not want to touch that because you're just putting a lot of money in it right now to update it. We certainly don't want to go and put stuff on you.
And my recollection is that the Paul Tyson build is picking up a couple of practice fields and a couple of different things too that are going to be part of that. So then if that space that has the existing framework for Waco High is practice field, that's probably where a lot of those other items are going to be able to be built out.
Yep, exactly. And so is the thought, I'm hearing a stronger preference for option 3, which is the replacement on the campus. Is that primarily because it gets you the most modern environment? Is it because we're not disturbing the students? Is there a driver there?
I'd say both of those are big factors in my decision. Because I believe that the slide said you would, if you did the renovation, it would be a 4 or 5 year process. I mean, that's a whole kid's high school career of being disrupted. That I just wouldn't want to put on those kids.
Yeah, that makes
I don't
sense.
know if any of y'all would feel this way. I mean, to me, there's something about pride too, and having a nice brand new facility.
Yeah.
Instills a lot of confidence in your district and in your school and in your educational outcomes. I mean, when you've got a facility from the 50s and 60s, I mean, that's an old facility, and it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence.
Yeah, you can tell the difference, or especially when university was first built, compared to, you had a lot of either kids transfer on purpose, or the ones that were left behind was kind of like, why weren't we part of the same package? So it's just one of those things.
And I think that's come up in discussion, I think in almost every breakout about the whole idea that we need something that's, a hallmark of the district. And Waco High should be one of the hallmarks of the district. It's named for the city, it's named for the district, it's named for the,
Yep.
So that's one of the reasons that I'm really in favor if we can't do the green space of doing option 3.
Casey, remind me again the difference or the costs of phase 2. I think to me, phase 1 is just off the list. That's just not relevant.
Yeah,
what's the difference? Yeah, yep. What's the difference in the cost of option 2 and option 3?
Yep, and so I'm just bringing that up on my cheat sheet here. So option 1 was maintain systems.
Don't worry about 1.
Don't skip 1. All right.
For my question, skip 1. I just want to know the cost for 2 and 3.
So for option 2, again, we provide a range because so many discussions have to be had. We provided a range of 125 to 155 million. So if you could pick a number in the middle, that's 140, that might be easier to remember. And then option 3 was 140 to 150 million. So again, you might call that one 145 just for a middle range. Okay. And so it's not exponentially larger, the cost.
So in answer to your question, to me, getting an entirely new facility for an additional 5 million rather than phase 2, that to me makes a whole lot of sense.
Kind of like buying that used car versus that new car.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's also a time estimated in that. And so if you were to do option 2, which is a gradual renovation, that would probably take 4+ years. Where if you were to do a replacement of facility, depending on the quantity of phasing and everything, that would probably take closer to 3 years. So you'd get something a little bit faster.
And a whole lot better.
One could argue. Yeah.
I'm asking this question, so I'm saying it's a whole lot better. Thank you.
Of course.
I mean, for the car metaphor too, I mean, it's not just the difference between a new car and a pre-owned. This is between a new car and a Studebaker that needs a lot of work.
Right.
Yeah, and so what are your thoughts, if we were to suggest to the group, and hopefully we'll get to vote at some point, even though we were supposed to get to vote first. When we come back, what are your thoughts on maintaining portions of the high school? We know the auditorium is of more recent construction. What do you think the community or your perception would be if we maintain certain parts?
The only thing about the PAC is that it was just recently flooded again. So, just thinking about the damage and how often you have to replace carpet and things like that in the PAC, I wonder if it is best to keep it or to go ahead and put in a new fine arts center. Plus, Waco High is known for their fine arts. And if we're having a new high school, a new showcase for fine arts is, I think the community would get behind supporting that a lot.
And I think that since we're a bigger school, we need at least a bigger auditorium or equal to or greater than what university has, considering. I mean, we have to put our sound equipment in the middle aisle because of the way that it's built. So you take up space and that alone. So it's just the setup needs to match either our classification and the amount of students that we have that participate in.
Good point.
Well, also, it's 20 years old, because when I came to Waco High in 2000 with Molly, that's when we did the dedication. So it's 20 years old for PAC.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like brand new. The science wing is newer than the science wing, and the construction on the cafeteria are newer than the PAC.
Did I understand that there is an agreement in place with is it Creative Waco, or that facility will be part of that entertainment? Okay, so.
Yes, my understanding, I don't know the exact language that Dr. Kincannon and others have used. It's already been agreed to and signed off with the board. So whether or not you guys use it for Waco High School swap outs or other activities, is my understanding. There was a land swap involved, and that is now considered Waco ISD property, those fields.
I'm sorry, I was asking about the auditorium.
Oh, the auditorium. So sorry, I apologize. What was that?
So there was discussion about the renovating or the creation of an auditorium type facility for the community. Did I misunderstand that that's part of the auditorium that Waco ISD will be a beneficiary of that or participate in that? Just shake your head no if I'm way off track with.
Yeah, you're gonna have to remind me. We discussed it, I think, in a previous meeting, not tonight.
Okay.
I believe I wasn't under the understanding that would necessarily land here. I wouldn't prohibit that, but yeah, to be discussed. You were confusing me there. I was like,
I know that the Waco High PAC and University High School's auditorium have done collaborative projects with Waco Civic Theater and a couple of other of the community theaters in the past. And that was kind of an ongoing thing for several years, but I don't think it's part of the Creative Waco yet. I think that's just been kind of a collaboration between Civic Theater and Waco High University High School.
I hate to derail us, but I did think I would take a chance to ask Casey, are we going to have a similar conversation about the other campuses? I feel like in previous meetings, we've established that Waco High is not the only problem campus. There are a lot of reasons to prioritize it, but there are middle and elementary school campuses that have just as many issues. Will we have a similar conversation about those campuses too?
Yep, so we broke it up. As you can see, this takes a lot of discussion. And so our next CIC meeting will be middle schools. The following one will be elementary schools. And with those, we'll also be weaving in other district strategies, talking about technology, portables, buses, all those other support elements. CTE, that's a fun one.
Casey, did the cost estimates that y'all had include the auditorium replacing it or not?
That did not include the auditorium replacement, but whether we renovate it or replace it, it's not gonna it's not a $5 million differential. You know, if we're talking the comparison between two options.
Okay.
Before we wrap up, you know, and return to the main session, had anyone been thinking, or has anything arisen about a potentially another solution to sort of address this campus or the district related to high schools?
I mean, besides maybe occupying the VA campus, it seems like there's not a lot of, I mean, it seems like y'all have explored it pretty well. You know, there's a lot of empty buildings over there, but other than that, I can't think, I'm trying to go through my mind in terms of Waco ISD campus or empty land. I don't know. I mean, besides just, you know, patching the fix or doing major renovations or a new building. I mean, it seems like these cover it, but I don't know if I'm not thinking what others are thinking.
Only empty land I've seen in town is on Lake Shore, but it hadn't been any larger than what we would get once the land swap is all completed. I think, like I said, I think I saw one sign over there by a dialysis place on Lake Shore. That was like 44 acres. I think that was the only thing that I saw. Unless y'all have inside lanes that y'all know about more than what signs are posted.
No.
I've been looking for.
No, as part of this project, you know, we have been tracking and looking over past records, nothing of that size. You know, and we're not saying your 40-ish acre site right now is too small. It's just when you design for a new site, you're going to need a lot more detention ponds and access roads, et cetera, that we sort of get by with here. For example, the Westwood High School site we showed, that was 26 acres and it wasn't all continuous, which was challenging. And in Richards High School is smaller. It's about half the size of University High School in terms of population. They were constrained on just 14 acres, but they didn't have nearly as a robust athletics program as your district does.
Yeah, and I think the existing site is a good centralized location for the Waco High zone. And then also, you got to think about if you do find acreage, you're going to most likely be taking that off the tax rolls of, you know, developable property that will benefit the school district. So
fair.
I don't do that either. So I mean, I think, you know, the current location is probably the best location.
And you deal with development every day of your life. I mean, do you know of any 80-acre tract that would seem like prime real estate for something like this?
Not in the current zone for Waco High.
Even close? Or is it's way out, like the industrial complex in that kind of area?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a couple in the 40 to 50 acre range that, you know, James mentioned on Lake Shore. And then, you know, there's some other sites that you can probably cobble together, but again, you're taking them from other uses and potentially developing them and you know, taking them off the tax rolls, which is important to me. I mean, that's what funds our schools and our cities. So
good point.
All right. Well, this has been very helpful. We're going to get booted back to the main session a little bit. So I'll report that we all love option 3, and I'll hit the highlights from what we noted here. We'll see how others thought they have, and hopefully we'll get a chance to sort of express our vote and sort of chime in on that. The original intent was to poll everybody just to get a general gauge, then discuss and debate, and then come back and see if anyone's opinions changed. Now we just don't know. Did everybody start this group thinking option 3?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's helpful.
I'd like to say of all of our past meetings with the breakout discussions, this has been the most robust and the most engaging of all of them. You guys have really been helpful, and I think it speaks well to the larger community advisory committee that everyone seems to be really deeply engaged in this and committed to it. So I just want to say thank you as Jane Doe citizen. Thank you.
Thank you. That's good to hear.
Okay, good evening. How's everybody doing tonight?
Good. Hi there.
Good. Okay.
I think I think I'm supposed to be recording this. See, I need to get. I got it. Okay.
Okay.
There's 2 of us that are supposed to be recording in the same room.
Pardon me?
There's two of us that are supposed to be recording are in the same room. Donna?
Okay, you mean recording from a video standpoint?
Yeah, we were all assigned to breakout rooms to record, and Donna and I should not be in the same room.
Oh, okay. I think I'm helping facilitate for you all.
That's fine. I'll talk to Josh about it. Thank you.
Okay, that'd be great. Okay. We were supposed to do a poll, so we might be breaking back out and coming back into this. I think we switched to breakout rooms a little quickly. So I think we're checking with Josh to see if we're gonna go back. All right, we're gonna keep talking. So we're gonna talk in this room about your thoughts. You're just sharing your thoughts on these 4 different options, or 3 different options really: maintaining the systems at Waco High School, renovating Waco on site, or replacing Waco High School on site, or other. And we're gonna take them one at a time and just kind of talk through them. So what are y'all's thoughts on maintaining the systems, that kind of plan over 15 years where just upgrade the roof, upgrade the windows as needed, take care of HVAC, replacements, that sort of thing? Let's tackle that one first. So that's the M&O solution. I see a head. I see you shaking your head no. I see a thumb down. Okay. Does anyone want to talk about that at all, or ask any questions about that option? If not, we can move on to the other ones.
Well, I just don't see that it has any educational benefit at all.
No. We can't keep band-aiding it, and we'll just end up having to continue doing that. And we'll be going through this every 3 to 5 years about what gets renovated. And it also doesn't allocate the funds specifically, so we know exactly what money we do have to make any renovations. We can't guarantee what's going to be done. And as we found out last week, we're one freak weather occurrence away from having to reallocate funds that were unexpected. So that doesn't make sense to me. No.
So that option was there to force you to the other 2 options.
No, it's a real option.
It's a bad option.
Okay. All right. Well, if no one wants to provide any other input, positive input on that one, we can move on to the second one, which is, what are your thoughts about renovating Waco High School? Just a phased approach to renovating, or maybe some small expansions of the existing space, shifting the students around as we do that, or accommodating that over school breaks from a construction standpoint. Thoughts on that?
I have questions about that.
I don't see
how are programs affected. I mean, they had that place where the CTE stuff is across the street. So
we're not talking programs, Donna. We're talking construction.
What?
We're not talking programs. We're talking construction. And
Well,
I don't see
that's not my question. My question is how is the day-to-day life affected?
Yeah.
That's program.
From a construction standpoint is what you're asking, correct, Donna? So I would say that as the master plan is developed, and then when it moves to a construction phasing plan, there's a lot of close coordination with the campus leadership and the principals to understand just that. So, I mean, there could be a situation where, okay, the art wing has to get renovated, and so art has to happen in a portable for 1 semester. And so those teachers have to box up their supplies and move them. Now, I'm just picking that. I'm making that one up. Which programs do get impacted like that is all part of the phasing plan and discussion with the campus.
Okay. It's just my only concern, because you got an automotive shop, are you going to move it? You're going to leave it there? Are you going to have to not offer automotive for a year? I just don't understand how that works.
Yeah, it's complicated, and it works. It requires a lot of teamwork and a lot of positivity, and it's hard on the staff. I'm not going to lie to you. It's tough on the staff, but it's very doable. And the goal is to come up with a plan that works best for everybody.
how many districts or schools have y'all seen renovated? Because I've seen a few, and it seems like the one that the test site that y'all picked, it was a very complicated one. Is it always that complicated?
No, it's not always that complicated. Part of what was really complicated about Westwood is it's only a 29-acre site on 3 different pieces of land. So having a larger site like you have at Waco High makes that a little less complicated. But with 2,000 students, there are definitely complexities. But a good contractor and a strong, design and phasing plan make it work. And our firm has been involved in numerous projects like that.
It doesn't seem that the cost for renovation and upgrade is realistic, because it would seem that would cost at least 50% more than building a new facility. A 4 to 5 phase program over the course of several years, and renovating those old buildings is always more expensive than demolition and rebuilding new.
Yeah, well, it just depends on, are you touching 100%, or are there portions of the building that can be used and reused and that only need like a cosmetic upgrade, flooring and paint or something like that? And again, the design hasn't been created yet. And so there's definitely an opportunity to pick and choose which of those things would happen.
Well, are all the restrooms and stuff ADA compliant? Or when you go in there, you're going to have to bring those up to date?
Yeah, we would have to bring up to date. You would have to bring up to date the ones that are not correct. So there's options. You'll have to pick and choose based on those sorts of things.
Yeah, but it seems like it'd just be a lot cheaper to build a new building.
I feel like we have the land available too. Why not just build new? When we have the ability to. The land is available.
Yeah, I think
with that land swap.
Yeah, if you look at Waco High, there's nothing in Waco High that can be touched up or upgraded. It's a very old school. There's no parts of it that can be salvaged or anything like that. So I think Mr. Holt is on to it.
I think my concern with what we saw with option C is that the current PAC and auditorium are not going to be touched.
Yeah, I don't understand that.
There are a lot of problems in that facility.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, I don't know that it's not going to be touched. I don't know that that's the accurate presentation of it. I think they're saying we would maintain it because of the investment that's already there. Very likely it's going to require some modifications and renovations. And oftentimes, you'll identify a piece like that because it's so expensive to redo that versus renovate it. I don't have the exact answer to that, but I don't think it's just leave it just like it is.
Well, it's just maintaining the building itself is what you're saying?
I believe that's what that means. And I can ask that question in the background in a chat here and find out for you.
Is that I could see structurally the main structure being okay, but there's a lot of interior that has to be taken care of.
Well, isn't that what we just saw that they were talking about was one of the main areas that had all the issues with the weather?
Yes, ma'am.
Was the auditorium, right?
Yes.
What I thought.
Think about the equity and the size of universities pack versus.
Oh, you can't even compare.
Equitable.
No. That pack was nice when it was built when I was a senior in high school.
Okay, I'm going to try to find out the answer to that, but keep in mind that this is nothing has been designed yet, and wouldn't happen without much more engagement by the district and some community as well.
Was that in 2012?
That is so nice of you, K. Paul.
And I did get an answer back from Doug. So he says it would be renovated as needed to incorporate it into the new facility. So basically they're saying this is a big piece that, that there is some value in. And so we would keep that. So we only have to add new to the other portion. So what other thoughts about replacement versus renovation or questions? These are great questions and comments.
So I did see some questions before we got off about tennis courts weren't anywhere on that plan. The track would be on Paul Tyson, right?
I believe the track is over there at the new Paul Tyson Field, but no other design plans specifically have been made. And absolutely with either solution, you would end with a comprehensive facility. And the design process would identify the priorities of how many tennis courts and those sorts of things. None of that has been determined yet. Okay.
Has any of the people here or any of the, I mean, and I, with all due respect, have you come out and seen Waco High? I mean, I understand we're all trying to be here and we're sharing things from community members, but there's not many of us that have the construction background to be able to determine whether something is salvageable or can be built upon. You know, it's not a house like, oh, it's got good bones or something. And so,
are you asking me if the
I'm asking in general because you're asking us, but I think we're limited as even with all the slides and all the work and all the information that we're getting.
Sure.
It's like asking us how, you know, to be chefs when the max out is Thanksgiving dinner. Like we don't.
Sure. So let me just, yes. Design and engineering experts have walked the halls of the entire facility. Mr. Carrera can talk to this better than I can, and the district has a facility assessment, and the process of doing any renovations there'd be another effort of that, another level of that. But absolutely, those things are being considered by knowledgeable experts who have assessed the facility's engineering components, design components, et cetera. What they're trying to get from you all is just your sense as a community member, and when you're talking to your peers and your family and friends, you know, how would you communicate the need, whichever choice that you picked, and why? You know, so what are your
at this point, I would say I can only give you the information that I have.
Sure.
And I don't know. So the reason I'm asking, I know that it has been done. I'm just saying what's been chosen to be shown to us does not include, this is what I think we should keep. This is what I think we can build upon. This is what it would look like if we did it here. Those things, we're not getting that information. So
that hasn't happened. There is not. Those decisions haven't been made because they don't know which you'd prefer to do. So you're
saying they've walked through the halls, they've made the assessment, the engineerings have looked at it, but they haven't made a determination of what would be feasible and what would work yet.
Yeah, they have ideas of what spaces could be maintained, i.e. like the auditorium comment. So that's a big building that can be maintained. But from the option 2, no, there's been no design plan. There's no phase plan yet. There's no identification of what would happen at the band hall specifically. None of that's been done yet because it hasn't come to the phase of designing a project yet because there's not a project that's been approved.
And were the schools that y'all chose, were they peer schools? Do they kind of equal out to what Waco High is, or the city of Waco is? Because it seemed like those schools were probably smaller schools or something like that.
The 3 case studies that we shared?
Case studies.
So those were really just provided to give you an idea of complexities around the 3 different options. And I don't know if I would call them peers. I mean, Westwood is in Round Rock ISD, and it's a 2,700 student facility, you know, in the middle of a pretty populated area right off of 183 in Northwest Austin. The Ann Richards School is a diverse population of, just happens to be the all-girls school that brings girls from all over the district, and the population is reflective of the district. So it's got 65% free and reduced lunch students, and et cetera. So it reflects that diversity. And it was a 50-year-old campus on a very small site that build a replacement school next to it.
Okay.
So they were chosen more for the construction relevance of the process.
Okay.
We have.
Did we do a vote yet?
No, and I don't think you have to vote in this group because you're going to do a poll when we come out of this group as the big group. Everybody's going to get to vote there with that poll everywhere function. So really, we just wanted to get your comments and kind of see what other concerns or questions you had, so you'd feel a little more informed. Jackie, I know you won't know everything you need to know to make a choice, or just share your thoughts. Mr. Carrera, did I miss anything that you think should be said?
The only comment I would say is the one that Jackie's I think what Jackie's asking is that through our evaluation, they haven't received that information in a detail where they could say, okay, now we're seeing what they're doing. And that's what I got from Jackie's trying to get. How come we haven't received that? It's a long report, but I think that it would be a good idea to share that with the community just so they can see what you really don't tell us what needs to be replaced. They just tell you how old it is, and that they recommend, the lifespan of this unit is such and such, and they just tell you that. And then at the end of the report, they give you kind of like an index number that lets you know where you're at.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that's exactly. And thankfully we're on other committees. So, you know where I was trying to get at. I just want to have the information. You're asking, I don't like being asked to make a determination of any sort if I don't feel like I have enough information to make that kind of decision. So at least if it's available, that means that it's also available for us to see. So at some point.
Can I say one thing before we go?
Yes, please.
So I over 25 years, I served at Waco High as a teacher, as a assistant principal, as a principal, and I can assure you, those who have questions, I've seen additional wings added, I've seen renovations, I've seen all that type of stuff happen, but it has not met the needs of our kids. That's why we're in the situation that we're in now. And we need a new school in Waco High School. Absolutely no doubt about it. I was hoping that we could find land where we wouldn't be surrounded by Extraco, but apparently we were not able to do that. But we definitely needed an entirely new campus, and the PAC needs to be renovated. It's not big enough, but I can't think of any other area on that campus right now that's south. It can all be demolished, in my opinion, after 25 years of being involved in it. I'm just telling you straight.
I agree.
Thank you.
Great. I agree 100%.
Okay. I think I know where this group is falling out, but that's great. Let's see. And we'll find out about the facility assessment, where it would be located. I've sent a message, but I haven't heard back yet, but we'll find that out. Yep. Any last questions or anything else you want to share with each other before Josh boots us out of this room?
We hammer through it.
Yep, looks like we got a minute. Thank you so much for all your comments and your input. You guys are a great group. Really appreciate you all.
So I think the task is to discuss our views on the different option. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So I'm going to mute myself and just take notes. But yeah, just kind of thinking about those options. And if you have any questions about what the options were, feel free to ask me and I can answer them. But I'll open it up and y'all go for it.
One thing that I noticed is that I think two of the options were almost the same price. I think it was like, I don't remember exactly, but I thought.
Yeah, I think it was it B and the new option was the third option, and then that second option was just almost as expensive as getting a whole new school built.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of threw me for a loop too.
The other thing I noticed or thought about, y'all, I apologize, my 4-year-old's here to join the party. The other thing that I noticed was, or thought about with renovations, the distraction for the students and the teachers and the the noise distraction and the dust and the commotion.
Mhm. Agreed. I've been through that before when I was an assistant principal on a campus. And it's hard because you're hearing jackhammers and they might be working right next door to you. Your
So
classroom.
we have to deal with that in both option 2 and 3, right? It would be the noise and the dust be a factor in both of them, correct?
I think option 2, someone's got their television on, I think.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I wanted to ask Aaron Zimmerman, if you don't mind, mute yourself, please. We can hear your TV.
There we go.
Can't hear what they're saying.
So I think in the option where you're renovating, is that option 2, that you are moving kids around more to accommodate the phasing in, and you're closer to the construction, whereas in option 3 you're building that whole new structure. So while it might be happening, it's not really within the existing building as much.
So would option 2 save the district money, or would it be around the same price? Because I agree, like option 2 and option 3 were kind of like around the same price. So would option 2 be a more like, I guess, cost effective option, or no, they will be about the same price?
I can't remember the prices on those slides without having them in front of me, but I think they were very similar. The issue is that when you're phasing construction with multiple bond elections, then your construction prices are going up over time. So like at a Westwood High School, they did it over multiple years and it took longer to do. And so with each bond election, your interest rate changes and your construction prices changes, and you just can't predict what will or will not happen. But construction prices generally just keep going up.
And those numbers were 125 to 155 for the renovation and 140 to 150 for the new. So that, I'll say the new kind of falls into the upper end of the renovation.
Yeah, I say go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead, Andre. I'm here to listen to you.
Yeah, I just think like you're saying, if those numbers are so close, yeah, you might as well just build the new one. And I just kind of when you're going to renovate and kind of fix things as they go, it's like, how's that going to hinder the kids' processes of going to class and moving around? I noticed even walking on campus, the back stairwell coming out of the second floor out to the back of the school, that whole structure needs to be replaced. And so if that whole structure is getting replaced, and now you gotta funnel all the kids out through the other hall, through the main hallway where it's already crowded. And so you start getting into those little reconstruction, those little areas to where it's like it's already crowded, and if the money's that close, we might as well just go ahead and do it.
I agree with Andre on that. I don't think we should put any more band-aids on it. I think we just go ahead and just do it. Let's just do it right. Go ahead and get it all squared away. That way we don't have to worry about putting band-aids on anything for a long time coming.
Completely agree.
I definitely agree.
One thought I had is, if we build this beautiful new school and we attract all these new students, are we going to run out of capacity because we're going to have such an interest to come back into the city proper and bring your kids back into public schooling?
That's what I'm going to ask too. That's my only fear, is that if we build a totally new high school and it's the same size, will we be having to build a new high school in 10 more years?
They'll be back. They're gonna be back.
I think the district is going in a good direction, and I think a whole lot of students are gonna want to come back home. And I share the same concern with y'all, man. I think that currently what we have, we're almost at capacity. I can just imagine with that new school, some school spirit, new direction we're going in. I think a lot of people want to come back home and gonna want to be a part of it. And
I might enroll. I think I'm gonna enroll.
I'm going back to school.
You are too old. I'm sorry to tell you. You cannot do that.
I'm a cleaner school.
So I hear you. When you're planning for schools, you want to stay close to those demographic projections. So you really have to trust your demographers on the growth, and we'll update that every year as we go. And so we'll see if kids are coming back. And then when you fill up your buildings, then you have the option to build additional facilities, or you do some innovative things like building the P-Tech High School at an MCC, which is a dream of mine, right? That you have this innovative thing that sits on a college campus where kids who want that can go right to it and do that. But that's a strategy for managing your growth. You don't want to overbuild a high school, I think is what I'm saying. You get it too big, and then the kid, and if they don't come, then you've got this massive building that's very expensive. So you really have to trust your demographic projections. Okay.
And they're going to build their new Paul Tyson kind of behind, according to the third option, behind the infrastructure on the old campus, on that land of the old campus, correct?
Mm-hmm. It's where the baseball and softball is now. We're actually starting that project now. The board just approved that, and we're finalizing the contracts, and we're about to break ground on that. So to have that done by August for the football season.
It was like $9 million, wasn't it? I think I read.
Yes, sir. $9 million. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is the Paul Tyson field used for football practice?
It is. It's used for, I think they use it for soccer and football.
Yeah. Okay.
They use it for soccer, football, and practice, track.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so we're, so the idea, the planning to move it onto the campus was because it serves the most kids. And so pushing the baseball and softball over was just because they didn't serve as many kids as the full-blown football field and track. I had one other thought, and then I'll be quiet and listen, but my other thought was, just rebuilding gives you the opportunity to be creative in the location where things are located within the building. So if there are some things that aren't working, and I haven't lived on that Waco High School campus, but it's an opportunity for us to think about the placement of programs and how the campus flows from day to day. I think that building was built, Doug, was that 1960? And so programs are different now, and we can change the flow of the day-to-day routines.
Mm-hmm. So I see people are concerned about like tennis courts and more areas for fine arts. So if we build a new Waco High, will those things happen? Will we have more tennis courts? Will we have newer fine arts facilities as well? I can't really tell from the design.
Yeah, so the drawings that they're giving you are just big building blocks right now. And so once we engage them for design, then we start getting into the details. And so then they will come to us and say, okay, Waco ISD, what do you want tennis to look like? What do you want your band hall to look like? What do your science wings look like? And then we get to tell them what those things look like. And then we, of course, we have to manage our space and our budget, but we get to design it all. And so I've seen those tennis courts. I know what they're like out there, and they've got to be improved. And for a 60 high school, there aren't enough courts, definitely. So there's an opportunity to make a number of improvements to Waco High.
What is if you were to compare sites to University and Waco High, what is the actual size of the site, like as far as what University has with the practice football field, with the practice baseball fields, compared to the site where Waco High is? Could there be kind of like somewhat similarity to layout to how University is laid out to where Waco High is, just to get a kind of an idea of from a bird's eye view of what it could look like and what all could take place on that whole property as a whole?
Yeah, so there are two different sizes of properties. I think University is about 60 acres, and I will have to verify that, but I'm pretty sure I'm close if I'm not accurate. And And the high school, Waco High School campus, I think with the addition of the Little League fields off of New Road, will be about 42 acres. So there's a big difference in sizes of the properties. Typically, you would see a new greenfield, as the architects are calling it, site for a high school in that 80-acre range. We just don't have that in the city of Waco to do that. So I'm pleased that we were able to pick up the 12 acres with the Little League field in the front. And our architects think they can make it work. It would be nicer to have more space. We just don't have it.
We can definitely make it work.
And
Quick question
on that space is to build up, correct? At least get 2 stories.
Yes, that's what you do.
To maximize the space.
Mm-hmm. And then that baseball and softball fields, those are not included in that 42 acres. Those are on across the street there, the new one we built.
And those are the old Lake Air fields, right?
Ooh, I don't, the ones on New Road are the Lake Air little fields. Not little fields, what's ball fields? Little
League.
So with those practice fields, are they right across from where Paul Tyson's going to be built, or is there going to be right across
be a
between
little caddy corner and a further, I don't know my directions very well, but a little closer towards the Lake Air Middle School campus, just slightly. So you just have to walk across the street and down, I don't know, 50 feet or so, not very far, but.
Okay. I think if I would have that pile of dirt sitting right now.
Probably.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
On the map, it looked like the new practice fields and the Paul Tyson field form sort of like an upside down L shape. Was that right?
Correct.
Paul Tyson at the top, and then the other one kind of down along the side, like you're trying to fit that L-shaped Tetris piece.
That's correct. And then across the street will be baseball and softball. So you'll have additional.
I saw. Just quick, I saw we got 5 minutes. I'm definitely in favor of the new high school and not spending the same amount of money to fix a structure that is really struggling. 2 quick questions though. What would the front of the building be, or is it too early to ask that question? Is the front on Bosque? Is the front on New Road? Where is the curb appeal, which is something that we talked a lot about in the discussions earlier?
Yeah, I really want to.
Yeah,
I really want to improve curb appeal. And so my vision, and we haven't worked on it yet with architects, it's probably too early, but my vision is you see it off of New Road. Just the way the property, just the way you see those building blocks laid out now that is on that option C slide. And I have to get my bearings to think about what that would be for Bosque. I don't.
Well, because it seems like, so Bosque is where the 42nd Street entrance is. It's where Target is. It's where the entrance to the new, that whole new thing with the convention, the whatever that thing is called, that new huge thing they're building there. That seems like that gets the most traffic. So I'm not sure if the front is on New Road, there seems like there should be something on the Bosque side just to say hello.
We can study that and think about that. I know one of the things we did at Lake Belton High School was we wanted a nice entry for technical education programs. So on the front of the school, we had the main entrance, but we had a very formal entrance on the back side for our business partners to come in and partner with CTE. So we can look at options for curb appeal on whatever sides we want to. So I appreciate that feedback. I haven't looked at it from that angle, but we can.
And then final question, why was the decision not to build a new pack just because the one we have is fine, or just kind of it's fine and it saves money? And would the existing pack be renovated as part of this project?
Yeah, so I appreciate that question because I don't think there are any funds in these estimates for the pack, and I think there need to be. And I think from the architect,
I was just going to chime in. We haven't made that decision.
We haven't made it, but from the architect architects looking at it, it's a salvageable facility as a part of the campus, and it's one of the newer pieces. So that's a piece that they think we ought to keep. I think it needs to be improved to a 6A level. And I'm not sure that the estimate included that money. And that was on the list of questions to ask. So
and I can briefly speak to that.
Matches I would hate to build like a new school and then the pack doesn't match. If we're gonna have like a new school and everything's updated, I would love for the pack to be new and updated as well.
I agree. And just to talk about I know there's a big ramp that you can get up into the pack, but again, that main entrance is up like 2 flights of stairs, and it's just not a great setup. So I agree with what Jeremy said.
And it doesn't match the level of University High School either.
Right.
Well, I'm excited.
Me too.
Go, Andre.
Very exciting.
All right, so we have about 45 seconds. Anyone have any last thoughts?
Doug, did you say you were going to address something about the pack?
Oh, I was just going to speak to the cost a little bit, in that you're correct that we did not include, I'll say, comprehensive renovation cost, but we did include, what would it take to integrate that into the new facility? So if there were connections or, corridors that needed to be modified or, things like that, it was more, we included that, but not, not a full renovation of that facility.
Okay.
Just to kind of.
I will say, just having been on campuses that are hybrids, going in a long hallway to an outdated space feels like a bit of a womp letdown when you got a new sparkly building.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we just wanted to be
was the square footage listed, but then the first two options, the maintain and then renovate piecemeal, both said 355,000 square feet.
Let me see on that one. And so your question exactly is, where did that square footage? Oh, I see.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I would assume that in the process of building a new high school, you could even go so far as to have a hybrid between option 2 and 3 and add some stuff later. But I was just curious
I'll look the same way.
Should I be concerned about that addition or that lack of 55,000 feet?
Well, no, because it's a lot of that to keep in mind with that option number 2 is that's kind of also addressing a lot of those educational spaces as well. So you're renovating and you're addressing that, and it's not really putting in more of that square footage, putting in more. So I think when we get back to the group, that'll definitely be something to address.
Okay.
With that.
Well, it looks like we're dropping 55,000 square feet, but that's okay. I've talked enough.
So
somebody else's
yeah.
turn.
Well, just to bring it back, so it sounds like everybody's on the same page on the maintain system. Seems like a waste of it, unacceptable, and we just need to do better on that part for the most part. What about the renovating the high school? Kind of moving into that discussion. Where it's like a comprehensive facility renovation to address the conditions and assessment, educational appropriateness, and the general existing structures through 5 to 6 phases. What are our thoughts on that?
I personally think that the very first option and the last option are not viable. So we're really down to just 2 options, option 2 and option 3. And I would just say that option 2 would be my second out of those 2 options that are left. I think renovate would be not worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is option 1, but I do feel like the piecemealing would be more difficult on the students, on the teachers, and on what we really want in the end. So I know it all depends on money though.
Any other thoughts on option 2, renovating the Waco High School?
I guess one of my questions was, if you're going to renovate it, are you still you're using a master plan that would accomplish some major renovations at the end of it, but you're phasing them in. So how substantially different is it from option 1? And how close is it to option 3? I mean, how much new facility space do you get? How much CTE space do you get in this phased in project? So I guess my question is, are we phasing in just the maintenance, or are we phasing in a true renovation of the space?
I'm taking notes as well. And I think that those are good questions to ask, and I can kind of answer it more on a high level right now. But you know, it's a little bit of both. You know, you're renovating the spaces because that's addressing the educational part of it, but you're also taking into consideration those facilities over the next 15 years. Well, so it's kind of both.
Yeah, and the reason I'm asking, I mean, like I know with Westwood, they started out with a master plan that would have essentially been option 3, right? But then because of funding, they had to break it apart into different parts. And so I guess, yeah, my thought is if we want that phase 3, I mean, if we want that option 3, let's go for that one. And then if money makes us come back to a phase in, at least we still have a master plan that would help us determine the kinds of spaces we would want to renovate towards.
I think this option it just sounds very chaotic to me. Thinking about the students, a lot of students live in chaos. Well, this is obviously in a few years in the future, but I mean, I don't know. I just don't think it serves the teachers well. I don't think it serves the administrators well, to be trying to be educated and to educate inside a construction project. And the difference, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's, I mean, I don't know. I think we need to go for the big goal here and do it well and not have, I mean, it just sounds like a mess to me to try to do this option.
Like option 3 would be a much more efficient use of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to say one thing about that, and I agree with your thoughts on that. What I guess I want to make sure is, since we don't really have the option of a green space where we have 80 acres to build absolutely whatever we want on, I just want to make sure that you can't build a high school over one summer. And I'm worried about us somehow limiting what it can be long-term, because we only allow ourselves this little corner of the property to build a new high school on. It's a question for the architects. Your concerns are mine as well. I agree. I'm a little bit worried about not ending up with what we want because we had to do it without disturbing the existing high school structure. But it's everything in life's a trade-off, right? I guess we could always add on to it after the new high school is built. If it's not quite what we want yet, we could possibly build the thing with facilities for adding to it pretty quickly.
Carrie, I think that is a really good idea, honestly.
Well,
that's a plan with that expansion.
Yeah, that's an architect's task. That's above my pay grade.
And another bond, I guess.
We haven't really talked about the money yet, now have we? Yeah, there's always that, huh?
Rates are low, it's okay.
Yeah, lever up. We may need to hurry.
I've kind of heard a lot of things being talked about this replace the high school, replace the facility across the property with facility conditions improvements and existing auditorium and new educational space.
I think generally that's the preference, is that I think we'd like to go all new instead of piecemeal renovating the existing outdated structure. And I think that I just wanted to add a couple of concerns to that. It was all about making sure that doesn't somehow limit us long-term because we're having to build on 40 acres. Well, the University of Texas was originally on 40 acres, right? Ought to be big enough for us.
I like the idea of the new space. And when you start reconfiguring space that was built for entirely different kind of instruction, you're spending a lot of time and effort in an old building to just reconfigure it. And if we're really going to be looking for students of today and tomorrow, we have to have different learning spaces, I think. And as we see more hybrid and high flex, and some of the space may not need to grow as much as you may think, because it may become less traditional if it follows current trends.
They may remote school. Yeah, I live in a house like that. It should have been bulldozed and start over again.
Are there, let me throw this out there. Are there any other options? Any other type of ideas that you might have for Waco High School? Aside from the options that we've laid out before, in front of you?
Well, there was the question that was in the chat, which said, is there, by configuring the district differently, the feeder patterns, I guess, is there a way to get an 80-acre green tract for this project? So I'm not necessarily suggesting it, but it was a question that came up in the chat.
I think the closest thing that we've been looking at that for several years. The Baylor Stadium property may have been the last opportunity at that. Within the confines of the district. There's just not much else. Even with, I think, the new university site, we had to go absolutely to the edge of the district to find a spot for it. And there may be a piece of land out there that I haven't thought about or we haven't looked at, but I think we've done a fairly exhaustive search of that, short of taking over MCC's campus, which is not going to happen.
I don't know. We've got an old Waco High. We could probably work down there.
I would say the only thing that hasn't, I think just to add to what Carrie said, I agree number 3 is the best option, but to add to what Carrie said is really looking to make sure that that proposal is the very best for that property. So I trust the architects, but I think to really, and I'm certainly not one, to really look to make sure that that space is being used in the very best way for the future. So I don't know what that looks like, but I just wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment.
That's my opinion too. I definitely like option 3. But I'm also concerned about what has been mentioned before. I noticed that too. Even the capacity went down. So like the option 1, where it has 355,000 square footage, it says 2,480 student capacity. But then when you go down to option 3, it goes down to 2,150 student capacity. And then my other concern, just looking at it, is the new option right now it looks like it has the front of the school facing New Road. And if that's been considered, like when I think of traffic and like all the kids, and like, is that the best front of the school, I guess, is facing New Road? So that's my concern of what I see.
Yeah, that's a bad place to stop and get out of a car.
I have a question about the projections, the demographic projections. The data that we get for church work has this area growing like pretty significantly over the next 10 years. And that doesn't seem to be reflected in these projections for the schools. And what's the disconnect there? Are the people moving here building out, or are not coming into Waco, or what's? If anybody has info on that, I'd love to hear it.
I think I would have to introduce your experts to our experts and let them hash it out. I'm not sure where they come up with what they come up with, but arguably, I'm sure McLennan County is slated to grow. I just don't think, to a large extent, WSD is built out in terms of housing, an aging population without children. Probably, look, I'm speculating. Y'all don't want to hear me. I'm guessing that would for the most part explain the differences in that forecast. But I don't know that for sure. We can. Do you have something you can send me on what it is you've been? Is it a printed report, Andrea, that you've got?
I mean, it's just no. I don't have a printed report. It's just the.
Okay.
I mean, for our church growth,
Right.
we've had our diocese has had demographic report.
Okay. Report down on this area.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably similar to what realtors have, but it seems. I mean, it makes me a little bit concerned about building, not going a little bigger with this high school while we're talking about it. I mean, while we're in this phase of it, and I mean.
It does need to be something we can add on to, I would say. And
yeah.
Again, I don't know how you do that. There's a huge area, obviously, there that we're going to bulldoze of old high school that I think at that point will become available space for Christians. So maybe we just need a big cafeteria. Those are hard to add on to. We're going to have classrooms later, maybe. But good questions. Let's be sure and put that one in front of the architects.
And I feel like everybody, I'll just say this, that like we're addressing all the things we've been discussing, over these meetings, in just remembering to consider these things as we're trying to figure the best option, which are the facility condition assessments, the district educational vision. We talked about those 21st century learning environments. We've talked about the demographics and the staffing and operational costs. So just kind of wanted to throw those out there while we have these last few minutes there. If any of these things kind of impact any more thoughts on any of these options as well. And I feel like we've addressed it, and overall everyone's still saying that to get a new high school kind of addresses all of those needs. It's kind of is that the consensus here? Good. Okay.
Yes.
Before that, I can kind of say all. Great. Well, looks like we have about a minute and a half here if there's anything else. And so I think afterwards, all of this, there'll be a poll to kind of see and kind of gauge that you can also put in your input in that as well.
Something I think we talked about the importance of a new high school. What we haven't really seen is what the trade-off there would be in terms of not being able to build an additional 2 or 3 elementary schools or something along those lines. So at least for me, put an asterisk by that, got to have a new high school. Until we've seen, I guess, maybe all of the numbers.
True.
And what our bond issuance capacity is. How much money can we actually legally get our hands on? I can't believe they haven't come and gone by now. My other groups never run out of things to talk about before they break us up.
I think we walked into this one, everybody kind of knowing what they wanted.
No argument.
Yeah.
Okay, now it looks like they're recalling us in a minute anyway. All right, we'll see you back in the sanctuary.
Okay, we have a little bit of time, so yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Josh.
Go ahead, Josh.
Okay. Josh Blake. So I graduated from Waco High back in 2002. Okay. And so I can speak from experience that it is a hodgepodge of facility. And so my vote would be to replace it because it, you're having to go in and out of multiple buildings to get anywhere. And that in itself, I don't think it's good. But then, of course, even when I was there, it was an old building, so I can only imagine how much more damage and work and love that it needs to be able to be a competitive building compared to all the other facilities in the community. And so I think it would give Waco High alumni and current students and future students more pride to be able to have a new facility versus what we currently have. And I could go on and on about it, but essentially that's where I stand.
Of course, and you've been there, so you've gone through all the ins and outs of getting in and out of the places, at the high school and how challenging it is. And of course, there's a whole security concern around that, coming in, going out, coming in, going out. So anyone else want to share?
I would agree with the two previously, Tiffany and Josh, in the replacement of Waco High. I trust that your organization, that y'all would do the best you can in the repairs and such, but I believe the replacement would truly align with the pieces that Dina went over as far as making the classroom and the instructional settings up to par where we want them to be with the learning environments. And as Josh mentioned, the pride in the building. So I believe that replacement would be the best way to go and the best use of the funds as well.
So go ahead, Lindsay.
Oh, thank you for that. I was just going to agree with Gwen, and I think that as a principal, I know how disruptive construction can be, and I feel like option 2 would be a very disruptive for the students and for the staff and family.
Thank you, Lindsay.
I was going to say, I think I would lean as of right now more towards option 2. I do think, as was just stated, disruption is challenging. But if this school year has taught us anything, I think it's taught us how to handle disruption. The reason I say that is I think, option 1, maintaining, I think that $75–80 million is a hefty price tag just to maintain. I just don't know if the newer site is necessary looking at the population projections, because it seemed like over the 10 years that there was actually going to be a decline and not an increase. And so that's just something I'm considering is if building a larger space would be even, would be even necessary if it seems like there's going to be a decline in student population.
And I do want to add really quick something that you mentioned about the $70–80 million. I wanted to just bring to your attention that was over time. It's not right away it's $70–80 million, but it's as needs arise. Obviously, you'd have some big improvements to be made as far as your systems, but then it's just the maintenance over the next 15 years. I hope that makes sense. Just the number that they were sharing.
Yeah, and that's what I said. I think that is good, and I don't think that the maintenance factor was also considered in the new buildings. I think we just got the price of what a new building would be, but even with the new building, there's also going to be additional maintenance costs, that are associated with that. I don't know if that was factored in as well.
I was going to say that I did like I think the replacement option looks to be the most attractive, and then I did like option 3 just with that additional land picked up from the county where Lake Air Little League fields are now. If it's possible to build a new high school there without disrupting the current campus and then be able to move over like we've seen in some of those other examples, I think that would be ideal.
This is Peaches Henry. I agree with replacing Waco High. I think that in terms of aligning with the ways that we want to educate students, as well as thinking about getting all of the building up to code. And when I think of code, I think of the ability to handle the new kinds of technology, and that kind of material is important. And I think that this is the moment to go ahead and build a new facility rather than to get down the road, which means that the current building is older. Even if we're maintaining, it's still older, which means it's going to even fall even further behind in terms of our ability to have a building that addresses modern teaching styles, but also that is up to code, if you will, with all of the new technologies that we have need of.
Got you. Thank you.
I'm in favor of the replacement myself too, just from what Lisha said, of all the different ways people learn and being able to incorporate all of that into different teaching styles. I think that the replacement would give us better options to pursue those different needs and not having to redesign spaces to fit something different that they were never designed for.
In old spaces, like renovating an old space to accommodate a new way of thinking. Is that all of us? Did you guys all speak already? Is that everyone? I have such an efficient group. This is wonderful. So what are sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, if we have time, I just need y'all to help me with clarity. I was not understanding what then, all of that space, like if we just imagine that the old Waco High School would be torn down, what is that space that would now be created? It can't just all be for buses. So I didn't follow how that space was going to be used.
Yeah, and I think when we go back in, we can certainly ask Ms. Peaches if we can go back to that slide. But from what we are understanding is that those spaces become fields, baseball field and field for play. So that's going to be a part of the improvement and the renovation, or we would create a different space in those areas where once we tear down the school.
And then was the place that was labeled Paul Tyson, was that like new Paul Tyson field or the one that already exists?
Okay, that I don't.
That would be the new one. So the Paul Tyson field that you saw on the screen it's going to be in that scenario where they currently have a practice baseball and football.
Okay. Gotcha. That makes more sense.
So that's part of the
current.
That's part of the land swap with the city and county that we will build a new Paul Tyson field.
Okay.
Which is currently just blank space right now, which are football practice fields, and there's a baseball practice field over there as well. So that's a good question. But the Paul Tyson replacement is already moving forward. We just, and from a design standpoint and a site plan standpoint. So we're just waiting now on moving forward with that project.
So when we were looking at that on the slide, that was the new site.
That's correct.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay, I understand. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Good question.
And I think we can share those slides so that you guys can see clearly as needed. So you can
May I ask a question, please?
Yes.
So, Rich Haskett. So, you guys do a lot of these presentations all over, and
I'm trying to figure out a scenario where you would ever present this to people and say, we can have the new really shiny, cool thing that has all the bells and whistles. I'm trying to imagine a scenario where you wouldn't have all the group go, yeah, that's just awesome. But when it gets down to the lip log, what are the realities that have a tendency to curb the enthusiasm in your experience? Because there's got to be some things that we're not thinking about. Right now, it's kind of a Willy Wonka list of all the cool candy, and I want to know what we're not thinking about. Because my bet is we're not thinking about something. The realities of the bond, crusty old curmudgeons that wear sweaters like this, voting no. I'm just kind of wondering. Because I want the shiny new penny too. Just
so right now we're at the kind of research and discovery phase, right? So we've pulled all this information, we're looking at all this information together, and we're dreaming big, which is a great time to be, you know. And then what we're going to do is we will have a financial advisor tell us, okay, you want to go for $150 million bond, you're looking at this much. And it may be, I mean, you know, we'll get that assessed. You know, it may be there are districts, but there's so much growth in those districts that there is no tax impact on the community. But that's something that we will continue to discover. This is, as you say, right now we're dreaming big and we're looking at the shiny Cadillac. But you know, what can we do? And then based on what we discover at that time, we then kind of start assessing. Okay, this is what we can do. But the biggest thing that I would share with you guys is it's really important that you have your why, because the why is more important than the dollar amount, if that makes sense. Because if we don't do this, what's the alternative? And that's really the place you want to get to. What if you don't do anything? You know, what is the ramifications if you don't do anything? And if you have that in hand and the community understands that, it's a different conversation that you're telling me my taxes are going to go up, you know, $20 a month or, you know, whatever it is. I mean, I really don't know the dollar amount, so please don't hold me to anything. I'm just pulling out an arbitrary number because we have not done that fact finding just yet on researching what the tax impact would be on the community. Right now, we're just assessing what the options are, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. That answer in its totality makes perfect sense.
You have a great point in saying, well, we may want to just renovate it if we find out what it's going to, which makes sense. So I understand.
Like you just told me there's no Santa Claus, though. That's okay.
I would like to just kind of piggyback on that. I push back a little bit on replacement because I don't think other options get explored as thoroughly in terms of the benefits that they could bring when you present something new. Almost everything else pales in comparison. When I think about just Waco in general, I think one of the biggest draws or features in Waco is a renovated space that now claims national attention. I think when you begin to think creatively and innovatively, you can renovate a space to do more than just fix things up, but to meet emerging needs and to also continue to celebrate rich history and tradition. So, I would like to see a more thorough look at what are all the possibilities of renovation. We saw a slide where a high school took an outside corridor and completely renovated it into a common space. And I don't think that, those type of options of what could be to meet, future demands are possible within renovation. So I do think that there's a lot more conversation that needs to be had, before a decision could be made.
Yes, sir. And you guys saw some of the imagery that we showed about the before and after, and you can't really tell that even that space has changed, and been renovated. There are some concerns when we do what we call like a space transformation, that, as you said, those systems need to be maintained and updated. We need new systems that have been there for many years. So when that's the case, when you renovate a building that's already old, we look at, okay, how much of it can we salvage? How much of it can we keep? How much of it does it need to be new? So it becomes a combination of both of those things. So, those are definitely very valid and good points that you guys are bringing up that we will continue to review as a team. So, thank you, Marlon. Anyone else have thoughts? We have 2 minutes.
The other thing I think you should be reminded of is we have the opportunity to build something new because we have the land, and not all schools have that. So Westwood, they pointed out to us, did not have another site to build and did not have enough land on site to be able to build something new while keeping the doors open to their current school. So we have that ability here, which I think we need to keep in mind.
Is there an option that has, both renovation and new, or like maybe, utilizing the land that is there to create a CTE portion of a campus, and the existing building be more for the traditional learning experience?
Yeah, we can certainly, that can be the number 4 option was other, like what else would you suggest? And your idea is to incorporate hanging on to some of the existing building and then adding on some new spaces. So that's definitely something that we can review and look at. So I'll make a note of that. Am I correct in understanding you, Marlon? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Anyone? Okay, we have 1 more minute left. So any other thoughts that you guys want to share? Okay, since you don't, I'll ask a question. Are you guys doing okay after the crazy freeze we had? Is everyone back to kind of regular normalcy, wearing shorts? Well, it was cold here in Austin today, so I don't know. I'm guessing Waco wasn't that much different. Right? So, are you guys doing okay? Okay, well, awesome. Thank you so much. You guys were a great and open group. So thank you so much for sharing. And we'll go back to
facilitating.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Had a lot of great thoughts and comments. So I will go ahead and turn it over to, I don't know, do we know who the first group was by chance?
Casey, I can take that one.
Okay.
So my group, very quickly, option 3, the replacement on the campus. Pretty much everyone had decided on that and the discussion. And the big reasons our group like option 3 is 1, it gets modern environments for not that much more than option 2. Option 2 was the renovations. We liked that it was not much more expensive and it was a little bit faster. And that was kind of nice, minimizing the disruptive to ongoing operations. Also, a lot of discussion about there's a community pride in new facility, both as a student attending the school, as a community member, as a parent. Seeing a new facility goes a long way in instilling pride. And then we drilled into it a little bit, and we had some side discussions. We're not sure if the PAC needs to be maintained. The scheme showed to keep the PAC. There was concern that it's not necessarily equitable to University High School if that was the goal. And it's flooded over the years. It is 20 years old, and so it's not new. And so we did discuss a little bit about, is that worth maintaining potentially? So overall, option 3 for group 1.
All right. And Casey, do you remember if these were numbered groups or?
I saw mine come up as group 1.
Okay, unfortunately.
So you know the 5 design team members. So perhaps you want to go to like maybe Amy next.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, I can just kind of call on you.
Yeah, it's Amy is 2. Room 3 is Doug. Room 4 is Jessica.
Okay, I can go next. So our group was great. And when we talked about option number 1 in maintaining systems, they gave it a big thumbs down. So they did not even really want to talk about that. Felt like it had no educational benefit and was like a Band-Aid that continues to be a problem. So we had quite a bit of discussion about option number 2 and option number 3. On option number 2, some of the questions were really about how are programs like educational programs on the campus and academics impacted. There was some concern about that. And, you know, we talked about the close coordination that was required, communication with the staff in the phasing plan, but that yes, you know, programs would be impacted as they might have to move into a portable for a semester or for a year, and that could, you know, be somewhat disruptive. The question was asked if all phased renovations are as complicated as the Westwood example we showed. And Westwood High School was complicated because of the small site. So a larger site helps with that. But yes, they're complex projects to renovate spaces and shift classes and programs around. There was also a question in our group that appears in the chat that feels like cost presented in our option summaries doesn't seem realistic. It seems like a phased renovation over multi-years would be quite a bit more than a new building on that site was the perspective. So there was a little bit of a question about that. So that really led us to talk about option 3, which was replacing Waco High School on the existing site. And that was very much the preferred option. With land available, they like the opportunity to build new and build more appropriate educational spaces. You know, we had high school staff, former staff on the group we were in, and they feel like we've tried that renovation thing and it just hasn't resulted in what we needed. Really like the idea of a replacement for more adequate and suitable educational spaces for today's learning. Also wanted to note, Casey, that they felt the PAC on that campus definitely needs renovation as well. A few people felt they could use a little more detailed information and asked about the facility assessment report. And I would say that pretty much summed it up.
Great. I think group 3 was me. And again, also very, very great conversation and some very good parallels, I think, with the first 2 groups. You know, one of the first things that we discussed was that, you know, since it did appear, you know, those renovation numbers and the new construction were so similar, it just makes more sense with a new facility. There was some discussion about, you know, what the challenges are when you do a phased renovation like option 2. You know, the noise disruption alone, just with that type of work on education. There was also a little bit of conversation about capacity and just making sure that in the planning process, if a new facility is constructed, that we're, you know, potentially considering, you know, what happens if, you know, as people do start to come back and they see this great new facility, is that going to exceed the capacity project or the demographic projections? You know, tennis did come up, and just knowing, you know, that it does need some significant improvements, but also discuss just in general all those supporting extracurricular and athletics spaces. One thing that we did talk about as well was the new building entrance and the opportunity that a new facility would give for enhancing the curb appeal of the building and the site that, you know, would not be as achievable in option 2. And then also, as the first and second groups mentioned, the Performing Arts Center came up as well. Not necessarily a keeper. You know, it's at the very least, you know, potentially needing some significant renovations, or you know, would potentially be benefited from being replaced. So I think a lot of good similarities there, and I'll turn it over to group 4.
That was me. And to keep with theme, best option that everyone felt for our group was definitely to replace the high school. Maintaining the systems to them, to a lot of people said was just a waste of the $80 million, and just basically we need to do better. You know, renovating the high school didn't seem the first option. Of course, money is a factor in budget and what we, if it goes out for bond and we get that passed, what's approved for. So it would kind of almost be a contingency plan. But I felt that this option, renovating, would be more difficult on the students and the teachers. And, if, people expressed, if we're going to renovate, how substantially different is it from option one and option, than this option. So, and other kind of concern with this one is that it just sounds a little bit chaotic overall, and just worry about limiting what it can, limiting what can actually be achieved and not ending up with what is truly wanted. So that kind of transitioned more into replacing the high school. That this is definitely the preference, instead of piecemealing the structure, so to speak, and just liking the idea of the new space. I will say, one of the things we talked about, as far as having that new front entrance for the school. One of the concerns for that, though, would be that it's facing a very busy road, that new road school. So that was one general concern talked about with replacing that high school. But really, they would prefer to go for the big goal, which is the replacement. One other interesting, different thing to report is just kind of, we talked about it. Are there any other options aside from the ones that we've laid out, that, is there something else we're not considering? So, one thing discussed was by configuring the district differently, is there a way to kind of get that greenfield tract? And we talked about how that kind of has been, but, addressed a little, but is there a way of redoing some of those boundaries that we could get that? And is there a piece of land that we have not thought about, to kind of consider as well? So overall, general consensus here that option 3 is the best for our group.
Okay, I believe this is Jenna, and I believe that I had the last group, group number 5. And like many of the comments that were made in the other groups, very similar. Option 3, the replacement school, is the most attractive and desired. We did talk about some things. The word align came up a lot, to align the way that they want to teach at Waco ISD with their spaces. So the spaces to accommodate the way that they want to teach in moving forward and the instructional settings, and to have that element of pride as well. Majority of the team felt that this was a best use of funds. There was some conversation about option number 2 and what are some, what can we do to hold on to existing spaces and build new buildings and kind of incorporate the two together, to consider. So we talked a little bit about that. And then one of the interesting comments that was made was, what if we can't afford this Cadillac? So this was a discussion that we had as well about how we are dreaming big right now. And then we'll also look at numbers as we move forward. So it was a very good discussion, and I appreciate all the input that we got from our group. Thank you.
Great. Thanks everybody for your input. And Josh, I think we want to go to that poll slide so that we can give everybody an option to really show their preferences here. So I think you all have participated before in the polling process. So you're going to either use your phone to text, or you can log in at pollev.com. So the instructions are on the screen. And then we'd like you to choose your favorite option, knowing that you don't have all the information available, but you have received a lot. So this is just where you're at tonight, your preference for how to respond to Waco High School. And we'll give everybody a few minutes to cast their votes. Has this been activated, Jessica? There we go.
Yep.
Well, that does mirror what some of the feedback was.
We're pretty clear here, yeah.
So that's great. I don't know if we want to give it another 30 seconds. Nope, we'll move on. So we're
We did
past
this.
that one.
and we don't need to pull again. It was the same poll. The original intent was to pull before and then after. Yep, and now we're done. Before we go to the next meeting, I just wanted to jump in. Our group was, oh, what are we going to do about middle schools and elementary schools, etc. Don't worry, we've got upcoming meetings. Next meeting, we're going to get into middle schools a little bit. So we'll be repeating this similar type of activity in the future for other campuses in the district.
And the other thing that I wanted to add, there were several questions in our group about just, different elements of a high school campus and design and which parts would be renovated and which wouldn't. And I just want to, reiterate to the whole group that there has not been any design decisions made. Design of any new facilities has not been happening with regard to the things we're still talking about, because the district doesn't, is looking for your input on how to go forward before that sort of thing happens. So I think that's it for tonight. Dr. Kincannon, did you have any parting comments before we adjourn until the next meeting?
No, I just want to say thank you. Looks like we have really clear direction on high school, and that feels really good. And I will let our board president in the meeting.
Thanks, everybody. It was a great meeting, great discussion. Looking forward to middle school next time. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.